Prologue. Failure. I've failed. Everything I've worked for has all been for nothing. I couldn't stop my best friend. I couldn't keep my promise. I couldn't keep my Nindo. A blonde teen laid on his bed in his apartment, tears trailing down his whisker-marked cheeks. The betrayal of his best friend Uchiha Sasuke hit him hard, but not being able to stop him and keep his promise to Sakura was even harder to bear. Staring at the ceiling of his apartment, his mind retold the events that took place right after his unsuccessful return from his mission. His thoughts once again fell on a pink-haired kunoichi. The look of disappointment on her face when he came back from the retrieval mission empty-handed shattered him. Flashback. Naruto wakes up to the sights of a white room and a smell of disinfectant. He looks around to find himself a hospital bed, with Shizune looking over him. Shizune, Ne-chan. She looks up and smiles at Naruto stirring from his slumber. Rising from her seat, she quickly does a checkup. Finding everything stable, she looks at Naruto and smiles. He gives his own foxy grin back to her. Then it quickly fades as memories of the failed retrieval comes back to him. This sudden change didn't go unnoticed by Shizune. Naruto-kun, what's wrong? Sasuke. I failed him. Sakura-chan. I failed her. Shizune was about to say something but was interrupted when a door opened and revealed a kunoichi with pink hair. Haruno Sakura entered the room and laid her eyes on Naruto, whose face was downcast. Not wasting time, she walks up to him and asks a question that devastates the blonde. Naruto, where's Sasuke-kun? Naruto doesn't reply. His eyes are covered by his unruly hair hides as not to show the tears ready to fall. Where's Sasuke-kun? Naruto, answer me. The said blonde remains silent, his fist clenching his bed sheets and his body shaking. Seeing this, cherry blossom kunoichi received her answer. He's not here. Is he? She choked. Hot tears ran down her face. You didn't bring him back, did you? Still Naruto doesn't reply. You failed. You failed me. You broke your promise. I can't believe you, Naruto. You dope. You're nothing but a failure. Shizune, not liking what she heard, turns to her and yells, That's enough, Sakura. Naruto turns his head and sees the crying face of Sakura. The look of disappointment and hurt on her facade was killing him. Gomen, Sakura-chan. But she didn't hear any of it as she ran out of the room crying, turning the heads of doctors and nurses as she runs by. Shizune casts a worried look at Naruto, but his facade was hidden by his hair. Then suddenly hot tears rolled down his cheeks, his body shaking even more and his knuckles turning white as his fist tightens. Ne-chan, am I a failure? I am, aren't I? Nothing but a dash. He was interrupted by a slap from Shizune, bringing him out of his sobbing state. The teen rubbed his left cheek and stared at Shizune, who began to tear up. Don't you ever say that, don't you dare say that you're a failure, because you're not. You tried your hardest and that's all anyone can ask of you. The medic Nin wraps her arms around the blonde, cradling him as they cry together. End flashback. The memory of that day was burned in his memory. It was the first time he's tasted failure, and its bitterness was lingering in his mouth. As he replayed the memory in his head, he suddenly felt an emotion that he didn't think he could have against his teammates, an emotion only reserved for his enemies. The feeling of anger. Anger and hatred, all from that one incident. As he once again played the memory in his mind on the events of the hospital, his mind began to work a mile a minute, replaying all the details. It was that incident in the hospital that showed him how foolish he was and his teammates. Sasuke was nothing but a fool out for power and used everything as a stepping stone to achieve his goal of killing Itachi. Sakura was a fool who can only see things at face value, who uses everyone as a stepping stone to achieve her goal of getting Sasuke. He rose from his bed and entered his bathroom and washed the dried tears from his face. As he stared at the flowing water in his sink, he came to a realization. He too was a fool that thought that Sakura was his world, a fool that was naive of his former best friend's motives, a fool for not realizing that he was just being used by the two people of his team. He gave them everything he could give and yet received nothing from them, no praise nor compassion. He was being played a fool by the ones he thought of as two of his precious people. Precious people. Sandai Mojaizen, Tsunade, Jiraiya, Shizune, Kakashi, Team 8, Team 10, Team Guy, the Konoha Murukor, the Sand siblings, they were his precious people, right? They wouldn't hurt him like Sakura and Sasuke did, right? They wouldn't, would they? The blonde couldn't help but give a sad smile as he watched his reflection through the flowing water of his sink. One betrayal from Sasuke team, one betrayal from Sakura, and here I am questioning my loyalty and trusts of others. Pitiful. Clenching his fists as anger sparked once again, he wasn't just angry, he was furious. Furious at Sasuke for leaving. Furious at Sakura for her selfishness and narrow mind. But most importantly, he was furious at himself, for his failure and for being naive. Gritting his teeth at his conclusion, he raised his right fist and slammed it at the bathroom mirror, shattering it. Bringing his right hand to his face, he saw his knuckles bleeding and his fingers trembling. Never. Red Churka begun to mend his wounds. Never again. The torn flesh was melding together. I will. The wounds disappeared and showed flawless flesh as he clenched his right hand to a fist. Make sure that this will never happen again, that I will not let any more of my precious people suffer ever again. Determination could be seen in his face as his mask of smiles had begun to crumble. He then stared at his reflection through his shattered mirror and received a shock that would change his life as a ninja. His reflection was normal, but one thing stood out: his eyes. Instead of his cerulean blue, his reflection showed crimson eyes, not that of the Kyuubi's. This was different. Instead of slits, the eyes had two spinning tomo marks. The sight of those eyes made him lose his words. These were the eyes that Konoha praised so dearly. The accursed dojutsu that was the cause of his pain. One word left his gaping mouth. Sharingan. Naruto was mad. No, he was beyond mad, he was pissed. The blonde teen was slumped against the west gate of Konoha waiting for Jiraiya for the training trip. He was told by the said pervert that he would be trained under his tutelage for a duration of 2 to 3 years. Though the mention of training did sound enticing, waiting for the pervert at midnight, who was already late by 2 hours, was testing his patience. Not that he had much patience to begin with, mind you. Staring at the night sky, his mind wandered back to the conversation he had with Kyuubi about the Sharingan. Flashback. Reeling from his shock upon seeing him having the Sharingan, our blonde hero quickly dashes out his bathroom. Ramen, need ramen? Quickly heating up a cup of miso ramen, Naruto settles himself down on, slurping ramen while his mind tries to make sense of things. Minutes pass, and after finishing his 4th cup of ramen, he had begun to settle down. Okay. Here I am, Uzumaki Naruto with the Sharingan. Kyuso. This doesn't make sense. I'm an Uchiha? I'm related to Sasuke team. After a good half an hour of rhetorical questions and cursing, the blonde nin relaxes himself, before bursting out in frustration. Again. Kyuso, why did this have to be so complicated? He yelled as he raised his fist to the ceiling. Frustration etching into him, he slams his palms with enough force that broke part of his table, taking out a good chunk of the said table, which isn't exactly cheap. Ah, good going, Naruto no baka. Slapping himself for his stupidity. That's when he smelled blood. Looking at his left palm, he notices a cut that was caused most likely by wooden splinters. Crimson Churka emerged once again, healing the injury, and that's where an idea hit him. The Kyuubi, surely he would have answers, right? Having nothing to lose, he sits on his bed and loosens himself up before calming his mind into meditation. Feeling himself fall into darkness, he opens his eyes. Everything was dark and damp. A sewer-like passage laid before him. Naruto looks around and feels a presence drawing him forward. Kyuubi. After walking for minutes, he spies a dark prison with a paper in the middle with the kanji for seal. Before he was able to take another step, a powerful voice stopped the blonde in his tracks. Who enters my domain? Kyuubi's voice echoed and rumbled around the area as a silhouette of a giant fox face enters Naruto's view. Of course, our blonde dynamite, being the #1 surprising ninja, doesn't disappoint us with his reaction. Having a good look at the fox before him, our idiotic nin says something completely idiotic. Me duh. Idiotic indeed by normal shinobi standards. Looking at the fox, Naruto could have sworn he saw the kitsune's sweat drop in his cage. Stepping closer to the cage, he locks eyes with the fox. Look, I came here to ask a question. And would that question be related to the fact that you have the Sharingan? The fox retorted. You knew, being taken aback. Kit, I'm sealed in your body. I live in your body. I heal your body. So I should be able to know what's going on in your body. Then you should be able to tell me why I have the Sharingan. Anxiety clear in his voice, unconsciously activating the Sharingan and locking eyes with the Kyuubi. Why do I have it? Why now of all times? Am I an Uchiha? Am I really related to Sasuke team? Wait, if I have it, does it mean I'm related to Itachi team too? Silence, Kyuubi roared. If you don't already know, having the Sharingan means you are of Uchiha descent. From what I can gather from your DNA, it came from your mother. Hearing the word mother, Naruto loses his anxiety and the Sharingan withdraws. Quickly he asks in a hopeful tone, You know my parents? Seeing the change of emotion, the fox gives a quick reply, I am not liable to say. What? What do you mean you're not liable to say? Anger clearly seen on him as once again his Sharingan appeared and spinning frantically. Kyuubi, taken by surprise of the second sudden appearance of the blazing Sharingan, quickly releases a massive pulse of killing intent. Naruto, feeling this, suddenly drops to his knees, but his eyes still retained the Sharingan, which was focused on the fox. Talk to that perverted Sannin. He should be able to answer your question. Now go. I'm tired from lending you a good amount of my chakra during your little escapade with that Uchiha. A woman does need her sleep. That being said, Kyuubi retreats further down to her cage. Naruto sweat drops at this. A woman? Sleep? Kyuubi? Ryaked. End flashback. Arrow Sennin. Naruto mused as he stared at the cloudless night sky. After another half hour, he spied two figures emerging from the dark streets of Konoha. A blonde woman with large breasts that would make a watermelon jealous, and a silver-haired man with a helmet that has the kanji for oil, with the summoning scroll for frogs strapped on his back horizontally. Che. About time. Ma Naruto, as Jiraiya waves his hands in dismissal. We would have gotten here sooner if Munchan, Breastchan, here didn't invite me for sake. A spike in killer intent from Tsunade was all it took to stop the Sannin from his spot. His skin considerably paling as he slowly turns his head to the direction of the killing intent. Jiraiya! Veins clearly pulsing on her forehead as she slowly walks towards him, a dark aura surrounding the blonde Hokage. Tsunade, calm down. I didn't mean YHHH. Jiraiya suddenly flew to the skies at speeds that would make Guy jealous, his form quickly disappearing from view until all that was left was a twinkle in the sky. Naruto paled at the sight. Even with the time he spent with Tsunade, watching her titanic strength in action was still a sight to behold. The Godame then held up 5 fingers, which confused Naruto until she began a countdown. 5. A small twinkle in the sky reappeared. 4. The form of a person suddenly came into view. 3. A girlish shriek could be faintly heard as the silhouette of the Sannin became noticeable. 2. Jiraiya's face was now visible, as was the tears coming down his face, and the girlish shrieks became banshee wails and strings of curses. 1. A crash could be heard throughout the streets, surprisingly, though the population remained asleep. Dust was coming from a crater from where Jiraiya fell, the sounds of bones crunching emanating from the hole along with groans of pain. Ignoring this, Tsunade walks to Naruto, who gulped at the sight. Wrapping her arms around the other blonde, Tsunade leans to his ears. I'll be seeing you, Gaki. Don't let this pervert get to you or you'll end up like him, understand? She says in a sickly sweet voice. Naruto couldn't help but nod vigorously, although not being drawn to the ways of the pervert while in the company of a super pervert was a bit tougher than the path to Hokage at the moment. Composing himself for a moment, Naruto looks up at Tsunade's worried face. Better be ready for me, Bachan. When I return, I'll take of your seat of Hokage before you know it. Naruto gave his foxy grin to Tsunade, who smiled in return. All right, Bakagaki, enough with the goodbyes. Let's go. Jiraiya yelled as he walked out of the crater, surprisingly healed and unscathed. Tsunade casts a glare at the Sannin that makes him pale once again. Jiraiya, Tsunade said in an icy voice. I warn you, just like I did Naruto. Turn him into a pervert and I'll ensure that you would never be able to reproduce. Jiraiya was sweating bullets as he felt the temperature in the temperature suddenly drop upon hearing those words. You understood, Myun-chan. The Gamma Sennin suddenly grabbed Naruto's right arm and used Shunshin before Tsunade was able to either grab him and tear him apart for his insult or grab him and use him for experimental medical jutsus. Either case would have resulted in doom for his reproductive organs. After 2 hours of tree hopping, they came near the fire/wind country border. Jiraiya stops and motions Naruto to a clearing. We set up camp here. Set up the tents while I go for food. Before Jiraiya could take a step, Naruto grabs his right shoulder with a tight grip. Matt, Erosenin, Matt. Seeing the downcast face of the blonde made him worry. What's wrong, Naruto? Silence. Naruto stayed there, gripping Jiraiya's shoulder tighter. The Sannin wasn't able to comprehend his problem because his face was emotionless and his eyes were covered by his blonde locks. Erosenin, I want. His already tight grip became tighter that Jiraiya begun to wince. What do you want, Gaki? Worry and curiosity in the pervert's voice. He was met with silence once again but was broken by a gust of wind that blew through the trees as Naruto slowly raises his head to Jiraiya. I want answers. His eyes opened and revealed his two-tomo Sharingan. Jiraiya's eyes widened and his mouth agape. And I expect it right now. Giving a tone of finality. As Jiraiya looks at Naruto whose Sharingan was blazing, one thought came to the Gamma Sennin. Well shit. Chapter 2. Coming forth of a legend. It was a mundane, beautiful day at Konoha. Birds chirping. Not a cloud in the sky, villagers and tourists all smiling and chatting, eruptions coming from the distance by jutsus. And the most notable thing of this wonderful day would be 2 green blurs having laps outside the village walls while spouting of sentences that all dealt with the flames of youth. Yes, it was a normal day for Konoha standards, that is. A young man in his late teen years was silently walking through the dense forests of Konoha, lost in his thoughts as he approached his destination. After minutes of walking, he saw in the distance the outline of his destination, the west gate of Konohagakure. Feeling a familiar presence near him, the teen abruptly stopped and looked at a high tree branch where the churka signature emanated from. There he saw an older, silver-haired man, who stared at him emotionlessly. The 2 nin's eyes locked together before smiling at each other. The older, silver-haired nin was a man in his 50s with a maturity that can range from a wise sage to a hormone-raging teen. It was the one and only pervert of the Sannins and beloved author of the infamous Ika series, the Gamma Sennin, Jiraiya. The other man was considerably younger, around in his late mid-teen years. Blonde, unruly spiky hair that has grown over the years, especially now that he has bangs that occasionally cover his eyes, even with his leaf headband holding up the hair, and now also has a small ponytail tied at the back of his head. Deep sapphire eyes that one could drown into and 3 whisker marks on each cheek. All of these traits slapped onto a handsome face of the once-known #1 surprising ninja, Uzumaki Naruto. It's been a while, Erosenin. A year since we've parted ways, right? Quite a peaceful year, too. The blonde smirked at the Sannin's irritated face. Che, kids these days, no respect for their elders. Jiraiya sneered. Then he turned to Naruto and noticed the changes in him and his clothing. Time has been kind to Naruto, whose fashion sense was significantly better than last he was seen. Ridding himself of his horrendous orange monster of an outfit, our blonde teen now sports black shinobi pants that stretches down and hugs at the ankles accompanied by black shinobi sandals. His upper body consists of a dark blue, skin-tight, turtleneck, sleeveless shirt, similar to a wife-beater/undershirt and turtleneck crossover, showing his well-toned body. Black arm bracers that stretches from the wrists and extends near the shoulders, nearly covering his whole arm. Finishing off his outfit was a sapphire blue robe-like cape. Design is similar to Yondaime Hokage's, with a crimson spiral on the center of the back. I see you got rid of your outfit that practically said, "Kill me. I'm an idiot. If it was up to me, I would have burned those horrendous orange rags you call clothing the first time I met you." Naruto couldn't help but scratch the back of his head and grin in embarrassment. After a moment, he became serious. So how did Tsunade take the news of us splitting up last year? At first, she threatened to neuter me along with other horrendous threats that can permanently damage a man. Both men winced at the possibilities, of course, since this was Tsunade they were talking about, so it became a really long list of outcomes. It couldn't be helped. Akatsuki had been unnaturally active, and you had your duties and I had my training. Though it's not like I was alone during the training I had apart from you, Hiro-sensei had me train under the acquaintances you knew that resided in different countries, as well as himself and friend of his in Kiri. Plus, it was good to experience relying on oneself than always having others watch your back. And we did keep touch via Gamakichi. That's true. But it still took countless explanations and assurances of your safety, along with a week in a hospital bed, and your letters saying you're okay, that she began listening to reason. Jiraiya unconsciously rubbed his behind. And what a week it was in that hospital. Damn. I didn't know churka scalpels could be used that way. Ignoring the grunting noises of the Sannin, Naruto looked at the large gates of Konoha. Nostalgia seeping into him, he couldn't help but smile at the sight. Like they say, home is where the heart is. 3 years. It's been a while, Ani-sensei? Naruto looked at the older man who stopped rubbing his posterior and suddenly had a mischievous smile on his face. Hey, wait, till we get inside Gaki. I swear you'll be glomped by fangirls faster than Guy can run a lap around Konoha, even with his 8 gates. Jiraiya stated as a bit of drool came down his face. I'll have enough inspiration for 2 volumes with that. Ika harem. That doesn't sound too bad. Faye. As if Guy could catch me while I'm using Hiration. Naruto retorted. His grueling 3-year training trip has paid off extremely well. With his skilled use in Kagebunshin, due to its special side effect of giving information acquired by each clone to the original via being dispelled, and his acquired Sharingan, he was able to speed up his learning process by leaps and bounds. Jiraiya, seeing his pupil's fast development, wasted no time in training him in high-class jutsus, especially the Hiration, the legendary technique of the Kiroi Senko. After 6 months of training, the Sannin noticed that the blonde would-be Hokage's immense growth on ninjutsu and theorized that he too would be able to have potential to exceed in the other shinobi aspects. When 6 more months passed, Jiraiya's predictions were correct, as Naruto easily picked up the basics and intermediate teachings of taijutsu and jinjutsu. After discovering this, the Gama Sannin decided to train him in every aspect, from ninjutsu to taijutsu to jinjutsu and to kenjutsu. Naruto is now extremely competent in taijutsu, combining Gai's Goken, strong fist, and his unnaturally high affinity for wind elemental. He was able to make a somewhat hybrid taijutsu style he dubbed Kaze no Goken. His style consists of the normal Goken, but with the help of his wind affinity empowering each strike, his attacks are quicker and causes wind damage that either cuts or pierces during a punch or kick. The winds accompanied by each blow are deadly enough to cut the skin, even if the strike misses by at most a maximum of 1 foot from the target. Now for Genjutsu, which used to be the department that Naruto lacked, was now no longer a problem with his fully matured Sharingan, which the blonde was grateful for his Kekai Genkai, for he thought that learning the ways of Genjutsu the normal way was too troublesome. Though his achievements didn't stop there, not only did Naruto exceed in ninjutsu and taijutsu and well-versed in Genjutsu, but he has now also developed his kenjutsu. How? Well, it started when during his trip the duo Leaf Nines came upon Sunagakure, in which Jiraiya said was the perfect place to hone his Futon jutsus, and is also where Naruto and the Sand siblings met once again. It was during this time that Naruto informed Jiraiya of Gaara's problem with the Ichibi and asked if he could help reinforce the seal. Of course, Gaara, not used to generosity, was stunned by this. Being a seal master, Jiraiya was able to complete the imperfect seal, allowing Gaara to gain control of Shikaku and have peace of mind. His siblings and sensei were grateful to them for that, especially Gaara, but they didn't know because he slept for a week straight. But we're getting out of track here now about how he came to Kenjutsu. As thanks for helping their brother/student/future Kazekage, the Sannins were more than happy to assist Naruto with Futon. Under the tutelage of selected Jounins was when the blonde Leaf Nin saw Baki, the former Jounin sensei of the Sand Trio, showed Naruto the Futon Jutsu, Kaze no Yaiba. This jutsu creates a blade of wind that is used as a point-blank to mid-range attack that is also impossible to block due to its intangible nature, and unlike Futon Kamaitachi, this jutsu needs no tools or fans. An ideal assassination technique that's quick, silent, and could fatally wound if not kill an enemy. After seeing the performance and the capabilities of Kaze no Yaiba, Naruto begun to think of a way to turn the wind blades into one corporeal blade of wind that he could wield. Flashback. Kaze no Yaiba. A gust of wind suddenly picked up and disappeared as quickly as it came. There were splinters of wood on the place where a wooden training post used to reside. Naruto looked at the remains of the post, Picking up a few wooden chunks, he saw the smooth cuts caused by the jutsu. Such flawless cuts in the space of a second. The Kaze no Yaiba, huh? Very nice jutsu indeed. The blonde looked at the half-masked Jonin, who had a look of pride at the result of his jutsu. Sugoi. Baki. Don't want to impose on you, but can you teach me that jutsu of yours? Judging by the speed and power, I'd say it was roughly around an A-rank jutsu, a very cool one at that. So, I think you can teach me, cause I need some good futon jutsus in my repertoire. Naruto scratched the back of his head while giving a foxy grin. Baki first stared at the blonde, then smiled. Kid, for what you did for Gaara, I'd be happy to. Now listen up. I'm not very good at repeating things, so I'll only say this once. The Kaze no Yaiba requires churka to manipulate the atmosphere around you in a 5-foot radius and flashback. Through repeated usage of Kaze no Yaiba, accompanied with hundreds of Sharingan blazing clones, he was successful of creating a sword that he could wield. By using churka as a container, much like the Sharingan, and by filling the container by churka-empowered wind that continuously circulates at rapid speeds inside of the churka container, the blonde was able to achieve his goal. The technique became known as Kaze no Rasenyeba, spiral blade of wind, due to its likeliness of the Sharingan and originating from Baki's Kaze no Yaiba. However, the said jutsu currently has a drawback. The amount of concentration needed for the manipulation of the technique far exceeded what it took for Sharingan, which takes a considerable amount by itself. Concentrating on the sword and on battle was taxing, and in a real fight it could cost him his life. Confronting Jiraiya with his problem, the Sannin told him to stick with a katana for the time being and practice the Kaze no Rasenyeba with his clones for battle simulations that would improve concentration on multiple tasks at once. After spending 2 months in Suna, the duo left for Kiri. The Gama Sannin then told Naruto of an acquaintance of his that was once a member of the Kiri no Shinobigatana Nananin Shu, damn long title, and was an expert in kenjutsu. Quickly excited at the prospect of being able to use a blade, Naruto wasted no time dragging the pervert to Kiri, much to the Sannin's irritation. Arriving at the village after 5 days of travel, the two booked a hotel room and started their search. It took 4 hours to find their target, and their meeting was interesting for Naruto, to say the least. Flashback. Again. Slowly walking through the crowded streets of Kiri, the two leaf nines were casually taking in the sights while attempting their search. Their eyes gazing left and right, trying to find a glimpse of their target. Ero Sennin, who are we trying to find again? You only gave me a general description: long hair, dark brown eyes, thin and approximately 5 feet 9 inches in height. The blonde asked for the umpteenth time during their search. Finding a man whom he had never met and was only given vague description of wasn't easy, even for shinobi. Jiraiya sighed in annoyance. Gaki, just stick with me. I'll point him out to you when we spot him. Sighing from their fruitless search, Naruto hangs his head down. Because of his inattentiveness, the blonde accidentally knocks down a passerby. Ouch! Oops, sorry ma'am, my fault. The blonde nin smiles in embarrassment and offers his hand to the fallen lady. Looking at the woman, Naruto couldn't help but blush. With long jet black hair, chocolate brown eyes, and a slender figure, all wrapped in a blue kimono, she was definitely one of the better-looking women that he saw during his travels. It's no problem, young man. The lady smiles at him, making the leaf nin blush a darker shade of red. The woman, seeing this, couldn't help but giggle at the sight. Ah, hero, is that you? The two look at direction of the voice. They saw Jiraiya walking towards them, a smile on his face. Been a while, hasn't it, hero? The Sannin shaking his hand. Sure has, Jiraiya. I see you haven't changed. The woman/man said while returning a grin to the Sannin. Naruto looked at the two and couldn't help but be confused. Jiraiya, seeing his student's dilemma, says, Naruto, allow me to introduce my friend. His name is Hiro Murakama, a former member of the Kiri no Shinobigatana Nananin Shu, and the one who we've been looking for. Ah, so this is Uzumaki Naruto, the one you told me about in your messages. It's good to meet you, Naruto-kun, the Kiri nin said, while keeping his smile on, and now directed at the blonde. Naruto's mind took its time as it worked on the new information he was given. If one were to listen carefully, you could hear the sound of gears running in motion. Though while the blonde's mind was comprehending the words of the Sannin, his mouth had decided to blurt out something different. He, did you say he? You mean to tell me this hot chick is a guy? He yelled. Oh, Kami-sama, it's another Haku. Is every good-looking kunoichi in Kiri male too? Hiro turned red from anger and embarrassment at the comment while Jiraiya snickered at his friend's predicament. Patting Hiro on the back, the Sannin said, It's not your fault, Hiro. It's your genes that fuel your female disposition that's the problem. The Kiri-nin glared at Jiraiya. Yeah, that sure puts a lot off my chest. Do you know how out of control it's gotten? I've been groped by males, Jiraiya. Gropped by males. You know how wrong that feels. Jiraiya's snickers turned into full-blown laughter as he clutched his sides and leaned on a nearby wall. At this time, Naruto could be seen at the nearest garbage can emptying the contents of his stomach. A thought ran through his mind. Damn the Bishounen. End flashback. After a week of recovering from vomiting sprees and Hayaton burns, the latter received by Jiraiya, Naruto came under the teachings of the former Kiri-nin. Through Hiro, the Leaf Nin expanded his Suiton jutsus and learned a decent amount of Hayaton. It was under the said Nin that Naruto learned the basics aspects of Kenjutsu and later on moved to intermediate. Like Jiraiya, Hiro noticed the Genin's fast-paced growth even without the Sharingan. Naruto absorbed all his teachings like a sponge, like it was second nature. As 3 weeks passed, the Sannin received word from his spies on the sudden activity of Akatsuki. Last flashback for this chapter. I promised Databeo. Jiraiya walked into a clearing. Looking around, he could see pieces of melting ice and soaked dirt littered around. Walking in the middle, he searched for our blonde hero and his Kiri-nin friend. Deciding to walk further in, the Sannin continued to look but stopped as he heard a voice. Suiton. Suryuden no Jutsu. Looking to his left, he spotted an oncoming torrent of water in the form of a dragon heading his way. Time seemed to slow as he realized his current situation. Oh shit! His hands automatically began a set of seals and slammed his palms to the ground. Doton, Doriahiki. A giant slab of dirt and rock sprung out of the ground. Enforced with churka, it solidified into a protective wall. The dragon missile slammed to the wall, turning the dirt to mud. When the Suiton attack ended, the wall begun to fall apart as chakra was no longer holding it together. The Sannin looked at his attacker and scowled. Naruto saw the scowl and smiled in embarrassment. Gomen Erosenin, didn't see you there. As the Genin scratched the back of his head. I swear, Gaki, you're going to be the end of me one day. The Sannin sneered. Jiraiya walked towards Naruto, his face now serious. The blonde saw this and decided to listen to what he has to say, because even though Jiraiya is a hentai, he's still a Sannin, and when Sannins are serious it usually means dire business. Naruto, Akatsuki seems to have been active lately. My spies have recently sent me a message on their current movements. I need to look into this. We were supposed to have at least another year and 2 months before they would start to mobilize again. I've talked to Hiro on continuing your training. I also gave him a list of friends and contacts that can help. Naruto stared at the Sannin before nodding in understanding. So we're going to separate for the remainder of the 3 years, huh? Jiraiya grimly nodded. There's no other way. You need to continue your training and I need to check on the situation with Akatsuki. The blonde Genin put a reassuring hand on the Sannin's shoulder. Don't worry, I understand. You have your duties as a Konoha nin and a Sannin. I'll be fine with Hiro-sensei around. The Gamma Sannin smiled at his student. He truly has come a long way. All right, Gaki, I'll see you in Konoha in a year and 2 months. He turns and walks out of the field, but before he exits he was stopped by Naruto's voice. Remember, you get to tell Bachan about this predicament. Well, ja any arrow senning. Naruto waved as he shunshined out of sight. Jiraiya left the training grounds cursing his luck with anime tears rolling down his eyes. End flashback. Time flew by during their separation. Naruto continued his training under different senseis while Jiraiya continued his information gathering before returning to Konoha 2 months earlier than Naruto. Deciding that leaving the blonde to his own was for the best at the moment, the Sannin decided to stay and wait for his student while enduring the occasional beatdown from his former teammate, Tswanda. Naruto looked towards the gate. I wonder how pissed Bachan is right now. The nin was cut from his musings by Jiraiya's voice. Oi, Gaki. Come on, Tsunade's been waiting 3 years for you. The Sannin said, who was now a few meters ahead of the blonde. He shunshined next to the Sannin and the two started to head to Konoha's west gate. Naruto stopped before the entrance of the village. Staring at the Hokage monument, he grinned. I'm home. Chapter 3. Sensei and Student. It was another typical afternoon for Tsunade. Paperwork overflowing her desk, obscuring her from view. Even with working and signing at speeds that befit a Kage, the stacks never seemed to dwindle down. Shizune, looking over her own stack of papers, looked to her master and felt pity for her plight. After all, paperwork is the only enemy that strikes fear to any Kage. 10 minutes of continuous signing and cursing, the blonde Godame abruptly stops. Reaching into her cabinet, she pulls out a measuring tape. Let's see, 32 inches. For this one, 30 inches. For the other one, and 45 inches. For Ga. Tsunade-sama. The brunette medic Nin quickly appeared at her side. Shizune, it's grown. This stack used to be only 39 inches. Now it's a freaking 45 inches. Tsunade yells while pointing to the accursed pile. Shizune surveys the area before seeing the problem. Tsunade-sama, where do you put the papers that you signed? I stacked it right here. Oh. Pointing to the 45 inches. Pile of papers. The brunette giggled at the sight of Tsunade, turning red from embarrassment for her moment of stupidity. Huffing indignantly, she pulls out a bottle of sake from her drawer. Taking one big swig, she downs the bottle in mere seconds. Slamming the bottle down to the garbage, she runs her fingers through her hair and sighs. I swear I'm gonna strangle that brat for making me Hokage, she says while rubbing her stiff neck. Before Shizune could reply, the door opened, revealing the Chunin Kotetsu. Tsunade-sama. Tsunade-sama, are you here? He yells while looking around the room for the blonde Hokage. Here I am, drowning in paperwork. Literally. Raising her hand above the towers of paper that obscured her from Kotetsu's view. Sweat dropping at the sight, momentarily he composes himself. Walking nearer to the pile of papers before stopping in the middle of the room. Tsunade-sama. There's a leaf Nin here waiting for you, claiming to be the Rokudame. Tsunade quickly rose above the paperwork. Is it? Him? The Chunin smiled at the Hokage's restrained excitement, knowing the sibling relationship that the two blondes have. Hi. He's returned. Quick. Send him in. Kotetsu disappears in a puff of smoke, leaving the two medic Nins in the room. Shizune smiles at the news of the blonde Jonin's return and looks to Tsunade, who was restraining herself from pouncing through the door. Well, Tsunade-sama, it seems you get your chance to strangle him after all. The medic Nin chuckled again at Tsunade's embarrassment. A minute passed. Suddenly 2 pairs of footsteps could be heard outside the door. The doorknob slowly turned and the door slowly opened, revealing Jiraiya, who walked in with a smile on his face. The Gama Sannin stepped aside and leaned on a corner of the Hokage's office. As the door was about to close, a palm reached out and stopped it. A tall blonde teen walked in. Taking a few steps inside, he reached the center of the room. Naruto and Tsunade locked in a stare. Silence filled the room until it was broken by the genin. I see you're doing well, Tsunade-sama, giving her a small, gentle smile. Moments passed until Tsunade disappeared from sight and engulfed Naruto in tight hug. Tears began to form in her eyes. 2 years with Jiraiya and another year be yourself. A total of 3 years that you had me worried, brat, she said affectionately. Is she saying that I'm a bad influence? Jiraiya's eyebrows twitched at the remark but refused to break the moment the two had. Breaking the hug with Tsunade, Naruto was immediately trapped in another with Shizune. I miss you too, Shizune-chan. After a minute of affection, she released her grip and examines Naruto further. Glancing from head to toe, she notices that his body has matured, now with a handsome facade, and his change in clothing added more to his now increased appeal. Nei-chan, you're drooling, Naruto said flatly. The brunette quickly came out of her stupor and blushed in embarrassment. Turning her head away from the blonde, she notices Jiraiya scribbling in a notepad. Righteous fury rising within her as she stalks towards the preoccupied pervert. Chakra scalpels activated. But before she could do any damage, she was stopped by Naruto's voice. Now with the pleasantries over with, I suggest we get to business, he said in an emotionless tone. The two medic Nins were surprised in this uncharacteristic behavior that was unlike the Naruto they knew 3 years ago. Ignoring their stares, he continues, During my 3 years' absence, 2 of them spent with Jiraiya-sensei and the last one being spent with different senseis, all of whom are acquaintances with Jiraiya. One would think a few things would have changed around here. Taking a breath of air, Naruto continues. I would like to know what has gone on and in Konoha. Also, I'd like to know the current activity of Akatsuki and Orochimaru. Surely you would be privy to this information, Hokage-sama? I'd ask Jiraiya but might as well ask you since you've already received his reports. The 2 medic Nins continued to stare blankly at Naruto, eyes blinking every 10 seconds. Even Jiraiya was a bit stunned at the display of maturity from his student. How much have you changed, Naruto? Jiraiya thought while the other 2 Nins thought at similar lines. What? Irritation at Naruto's voice at the unsettling looks he was given by the occupants of the room. Dismissing the rare show maturity from her surrogate brother, Tsunade returns to her desk before setting her gaze at him again. For starters, Konoha has been a bit quiet ever since your leave. Naruto scratches the back of his head. And most of your friends have become Chunin. The Konohamaru Corps also joined the ranks and are currently Genin. Wait, most of my friends? Confusion in his voice. Yes, Hyuga Niji and Aburame Shino have both become rookie Jounin. Quite a feat if you ask me. Hearing this, Naruto couldn't help but smile at his friend's achievements. Tsunade cleared her throat before continuing on. But as for the information on Akatsuki and Otogekure, I'm sorry Naruto, but that information is only given to those of elite Chunin and Jounins. Don't ask Jiraiya either because I've specifically asked him not to spill information unless it's an emergency. Silence ensued as Naruto's heart sank, but a voice broke the silence, this time by Jiraiya. But there is a way he could obtain the information legally, am I right, Swandaheim? A glint could be seen in his eyes. Tsunade sporting a similar look. Yes, there is a way that he can get them along with other benefits. Shizune and Naruto looked at the 2 in confusion. Tsunade rummaged through one of her cabinets and pulled out a form. Naruto, do you know how a ninja moves up in ranks without taking official exams? Though still confused at the current situation, he decides to answer. Yes, there are 3 ways. The first is when ninjas perform well in missions that are 1 or 2 ranks above them. The second is during wartime where it is necessary at times to move ninjas into higher ranks. The last is when a ninja is tested by a high-ranking nin, specifically Jounin or ANBU, while in the presence of other Jounins for an unbiased result. Though I still don't see what this has to do with. Naruto stopped himself as realization hit him. Jiraiya and Tsunade sported smirks, and Shizune casts a smile now understanding the situation. The blonde Godame then handed a form to Naruto, who quickly studied the paper. Jounin registration? Jiraiya has informed me that you were more than capable of handling the rank of Jounin by the time the 2 of you parted ways a year ago. I think that testing you for this rank is more suitable than putting you in for Chunin, unless... Tsunade left her sentence hanging. Putting me in for Chunin would be an understatement to my abilities, Bachan. His lips forming a confident smirk. Well then, Gaki, go to Training Field 7, your Jounin proctors should be arriving there shortly. I'll be there as well as Jiraiya, we're curious to see your progress, she said in glee. Putting the paper in one of his many pockets, Naruto leaves the room in a whirl of leaves. Shizune looks at her mentor, a bit of worry on her face. Are you sure this is wise, Tsunade-sama? Jiraiya puts a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Don't worry. I've seen his growth the time he was training under me. Have confidence in him, because I do. Opening one of the windows in the room. I'll see you at the training grounds, Tsunade. Jumping through the window. Rummaging through her drawers once more, Tsunade pulled another sake bottle and downing it in 2 gulps. Throwing it in the garbage, she leans back on her chair looking at the Hokage monument. This is going to be a long day, she sighed. Training Field 7. Training Field 7, huh? Gazing upon the area of his old training grounds, he felt nostalgic. Walking deeper into the field, he spots 3 wooden posts embedded in the ground. Resting his hand on the middle post, memories of his happier times with Team 7 filled his mind. Sitting down and leaning on the post, Naruto stares up at the sky, engulfed in calm. As 10 minutes pass, the blonde senses 8 familiar chakra signatures. About time. I think Kakashi-sensei's tardiness has been rubbing off on the shinobi populace while I was gone. Chuckling at the times his former sensei was usually late on team meetings. 8 nins entered the field. All are either Jonin or higher rank: Kakashi, Gai, Kurenai, Asuma, Genma, Shizune, and the 2 Sanins. As they entered the field, they noticed that it was vacant. "You sure you told him the right training grounds, Tswanda-sama?" Kurenai asked at the bewildered Hokage. "Yes, I told him to go to training field 7. He should have already been here by now, unless of course he started a habit of being chronically late." Glaring at Kakashi, whose eyebrow was twitching. "I'm losing my dignity, aren't I?" The copy nin mused while his Jounin companions were chuckling at his expense. "That hurts, Bachan. Do you really have so little faith in me?" A voice shot throughout the surrounding trees. A gust of wind blew through the field, blowing blades of grass and leaves. The winds then receded and Naruto stood in front of the gathered nins, arms crossed and a smirk on his facade. The group of elite nins stared at the blonde, more so than others. "I didn't sense his presence at all. Interesting." Jiraiya felt proud of his student while the others had thoughts similar to his. The Jounin senseis gazed upon the former orange wearing blonde along with the Genma, the proctor for the 3rd part of the Chunin exams. "And Naruto? Is that you, Naruto?" Kakashi gasped as he studied his former student. "Do you know any other male nin in Konoha that has spiky blonde hair, whisker marks on each cheek, and a well-toned body?" the blonde joked. Kurenai stared on, a faint blush on her face, as she took in Naruto's new appearance in full detail. Naruto senses her gaze and shifts his eyes to her. "Kurenai-sensei, you're drooling," he deadpanned. The red-eyed Kunoichi blushed and fidgeted in embarrassment. The group of Jounins laughed at her situation. "Yosh, it seems that Naruto-kun's flames of youth has grown, and is now raising it higher by hitting on older women," Gai yelled while doing his signature pose, white teeth sparkling and an unbreakable genjutsu of a sunset in the background. "Some things never change, I guess." Naruto's sweat dropped at the sight. "I didn't know that you were the one that we needed to proctor for this. Jounin rank, huh? Heh. Things have changed over the years, hasn't it, Naruto?" Asuma said as he received a nod from Naruto. Genma continued to watch on and received a wave from the blonde, which he returned. Kakashi was still stunned at the appearance of his student. "He's grown, Naruto." Naruto's voice took him out of his stupor. "So Tsunade-sama, who would be the one testing me for this test?" Looking at the female blonde, a mischievous glint came in Tsunade's eyes as she stepped forward. "Uzumaki Naruto, in this test you will be judged by 5 Jounins and 2 Sanins to see if you have the capabilities and properties suitable for Jounin, and in this test your opponent is Hatake Kakashi." Naruto's eyes widened before nodding. Walking in the opposite direction of the group, he stops when he was 30 feet away. Tsunade, Jiraiya, Shizune, and the 4 other Jounins stepped away and rested on the spot where the 3 training posts were located. Kakashi's eyes locked with Naruto's before smiling. "It's been a while, Naruto. I see you've changed quite a bit." "Definitely changed. I wouldn't be surprised if you became the next eye candy for the Kunoichi populace in the village." Erupting in perverted giggles at the end. "And I see you haven't changed much, sensei. Still a late closet pervert, I see." The blonde heartily replied. Both opponents shared a good laugh before stopping. Once again they began to analyze their opponent. Silence ensued, but was quickly broken by another familiar voice. "Jai-sensei." The 2 Sanins and the 5 Jounins who were gathered at the post stared, while Naruto and Kakashi ignored, at an oncoming green blur that was holding a figure. 3 other blurs were dashing not too far behind. The green blur landed in a whirl of leaves, revealing Lee, who now looked like a Gaiminami, with Niji being lifted by Lee's right arm. "Jai-sensei." "Yes, Lee. Niji has performed something unyouthful." "What is it, my beautiful Lee?" He used his Byakugan to look through Tenten's clothes. "What? Is this true, Niji?" "He's lying," the Hyuga prodigy yelled. "I was practicing my proficiency with the Byakugan when Tenten came up and talked to me." "Liar. Then how come you still had it on and was staring at her chests?" The Gai clone yelled indignantly. "Because I felt your presence behind her and used the Byakugan to see through her only to see you crouching down," Niji retorted. "What were you doing anyway?" "I was beating my record on squatting." "While staring at Tenten's ass?" The pale-eyed Jounin then saw a volley of kunais aimed at him and Lee. Both Nins jumped to the side, avoiding the projectiles. Tenten came into view along with Sakura and Shikamaru. "Will you two stop talking about that?" Tenten spat in an icy tone as she slowly walked to her two teammates who were hiding behind Guy, fearful of the righteous anger of their female teammate. "Tsunade-sama, sorry for the interruption, but we couldn't stop Lee from entering the grounds." Sakura came over with Shikamaru lazily walking behind her. Tsunade raised her hand, signaling the two to stop in their tracks. Looking over to the still bickering Team Guy, she clears her throat, gaining their attention. "Team Guy, Sakura, and Shikamaru, we are in the middle of proctoring the ascension of a ninja to the Jonin ranks. You guys may watch as well, seeing as you're here now, but don't disturb the process." "So who's the one being tested?" Shikamaru asks as he sits himself down near Asuma. Asuma looked at his student before complying. "A good friend of yours," the chain smoker replied while lighting a cigarette, which was quickly extinguished by Shizune, much to his irritation. "A good friend of mine? Who?" Shikamaru was but off by Genma, who pointed in the direction of Kakashi and Naruto. The members of Team Guy and Sakura also looked in the direction, finding two people that were staring at each other. Sakura looked at Kakashi's opponent. "Let's see, blonde hair, blue eyes, whisker marks, a hot body weight. Is that?" But before she could say anything, she was beat by Lee. "Naruto-kun has returned." Niji and Shikamaru stared on in shock at their friend's drastic change in appearance, while Tenten had sparkles in her eyes. "That's Naruto. Damn," the weapon mistress mused. "Enough." The group of young Nins were cut from their thoughts by Tsuanda, who continued, "Hatake Kakashi, Uzumaki Naruto, the match for Jounin rank will now commence. Begin." Kakashi quickly raised his headband, revealing his spinning Sharingan. Naruto looked in surprise before smiling. "Not going to read your book this time, Sense?" "Nope. Something tells me I'm going to have to go all out in this. Don't disappoint me, Naruto." For a while, neither of the two competitors moved from their spots. Naruto was the first to act. Reaching into his pouch, he threw a volley of shuriken at the silver-haired Jounin. Kakashi ducked the volley and countered it with his own. The blonde jumped, dodging the attack, but was met with another volley of projectiles. Putting his hand to a seal, he shouts, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." For clones appeared at his side. Two of the clones grabbed a hold of Naruto and another clone and chucked them higher to the sky. The two said Bunshins were then dispelled, being impaled by kunais. The remaining clone took a hold of Naruto's arm and swung him at Kakashi's direction before dispelling. Naruto charged in at Kakashi, Rasengan in hand. The gap between the two Nins was quickly closing. Naruto was now within 5 feet of the silver-haired Nin. Before he was able to connect the attack, Kakashi took a hold of Naruto's right wrist and slammed him into the ground, dispelling his Rasengan and pitted a kunai to his neck. "Good tactic, but not good enough, Naruto," the Jounin stated. Naruto sported a smirk which didn't go unnoticed by Kakashi and the onlookers. "Bunshin Daibakuha." Kakashi's eyes widened and quickly took off his hold, but before he could move out to a safe distance, Naruto exploded, leveling the surrounding trees. The force of the blow threw Kakashi into the air. With a quick flip, he lands safely to the ground but didn't remain unscathed. Parts of his clothes were singed and the explosion knocked out the air in his lungs. Composing himself, the silver-haired Jounin took a defensive stance, glancing around for signs of his blonde attacker. Sensing a presence behind him, Kakashi quickly ducks, barely avoiding a kick to the head. Using Shunshin, Kakashi reappeared 17 feet away. Naruto took the standard Gukken stance, which surprised Kakashi and the onlookers, excluding the two Sanins. "Sensei," Kakashi looked at Naruto while taking his own stance. "Shinobi Tactical Knowledge Number 1, Taijutsu." "Well, this is an interesting wrinkle." Tsunade smiled at the awkward situation Kakashi was in. The two stared at each other once again. "Shall we dance, Sensei?" The blonde smirked. Kakashi's Sharingan glowed. The challenge was accepted, and the two disappeared in a whirl of leaves. Chapter 4: Results of Training. Fallen trees and numerous craters that were littered around the area was the only indication that a taijutsu battle is in progress. The sounds of steel clashing, body parts thumping with each hit, and the blurs that were appearing only to disappear were all that could be seen and heard. Two figures came into view in the center of the field, both somewhat winded due to their battle. On one side was the copy ninja Kakashi in a defensive stance, his body sporting cuts and parts of his clothing torn. Naruto was on the other side, also in a stance. His body has a few cuts from kunais, but his wounds weren't as bad as Kakashi's. His taijutsu style is Gukken, that much I know. What I don't know is how he keeps inflicting damage on me even when I dodge and block. How do dash? Kakashi was cut from his thoughts as Naruto charged straight at him. The Jonin set himself to counter the attack. Naruto disappears from sight and reappeared above Kakashi, preparing a drop kick. Kakashi sidestepped to the right, avoiding the kick by an inch, but that was enough as a cut appeared on his left arm. Again, frustration seeped into him as he jumped back a few meters from Naruto. Calm down, Hitaki, and analyze your opponent. Look for things out of the ordinary. Composing himself, Kakashi, with his Sharingan eye, studied Naruto as the blonde set himself at a stance once again. Focusing his eyes, he saw layers of thin chakra lines circulating throughout Naruto's arms and legs at great speeds. I see wind manipulation, huh? The way he controls it is similar to Asuma's Hien. That's how he's able to cut me even if he misses. But there has to be a range of how far the winds extend. Using Shunshin, Naruto teleported a foot away from Kakashi, his arm about to deliver a punch to his chest. I guess I'll find out through trial and error. Kakashi mused as he dodged the blow by bending his body to the right, avoiding the strike by 11 inches. A small cut appeared on his Jonin vest but didn't draw blood. I see. Quickly twisting his body, the copy Nin delivers a kick to Naruto's abdomen, sending the blonde a good 15 feet back. The genin skidded on the ground before coming to a halt. Taking a breath of air, he set himself for another attack. Seems Sensei figured out the trick to my attacks. But it takes more than that to counter my style. The blonde inwardly smirks as he sets his eyes on Kakashi. So Kakashi's figured out the force behind Naruto's attacks. Jiraiya thought out loud. You mean how Kakashi keeps getting wounded even if he blocks or dodge? Kurenai asked, and the rest of the onlookers looked to Jiraiya hoping for answers as well. Each of them, Jiraiya excluded, were awed at how Kakashi was barely keeping up with Naruto during their still ongoing taijutsu bout. Yes, to put it simply, Naruto's style is a combination of Gai's Gukken and Asuma's Hien. The Sannin stopped there, letting the information sink into them. Tsunade and Asuma's eyes widened as two words left the smoker's mouth. Wind manipulation. Everyone's head turned towards him, excluding the Sannins who just nodded, looking at the curious eyes egging him to continue the chain smoker side. If what Jiraiya-sama says is true, then he's combining Gai's taijutsu style with wind manipulation. He's using wind-based chakra to have an extension in his arms and legs that cuts the opponent even if the user misses. It's the same thing I do with my trench knives when I use Hien. All of them were stunned at his explanation. Even Shikamaru had his eyes intensely focused on his sensei. Neji quickly recovered from his shock and activated his Byakugan and stared at Naruto. I see it. Layers of chakra lines coursing through the lower arms and legs, the Hyuga stated. Gemma took out the sunbon from his mouth and stared at the two fighters. If Naruto's using that type of taijutsu, then Kakashi's in for more than he bargained for. Everyone nodded in agreement. Let your flames of youth burn brightly, Naruto Keiyuin. Guy and Lee yelled in unison, much to the displeasure of everyone near them. Naruto charged at Kakashi once again at a great speed. Blurring out of existence, the blonde reappears under Kakashi preparing a kick. Konoha Senpu. The blonde sends a powerful upward kick towards the silver-haired Jounin's chin, but the moment he made contact, his foot demolished a log instead. Kawarimi. Kakashi shunshined behind Naruto, preparing a backhand blow to the side of the blonde's head. Sensing an upcoming attack, the blonde ducks in time as a fist brushes through his hair. Naruto counters by doing a roundhouse kick that connects with the Jounin's ribs, but once again he was met with a log. So he's countering my style through Kawarimi. Clever, as expected from Sensei. The one-eyed Sharingan user hid himself in the trees while looking at his student. His mind was going through numerous strategies, figuring out better ways to counter. Using his hands, he rubbed his temples and sighed. This is going to be a while. Tell me about it. A voice behind him said. Kakashi's eyes widened as he turned around. Standing on the same branch was Naruto, who was smiling at him sweetly. Too sweetly. Had a nice break? Good. Let's continue then, shall we? Kakashi inwardly groaned as the blonde disappeared in a whirl of leaves. A thought ran through his mind as Kakashi sensed a figure directly behind him. Son of a... A loud explosion caught the attention of the audience in the fight. Looking at the direction of the fallen trees and dust, they say a figure come out of the smoke and into the clearing. The figure turned out to be Kakashi, who was slightly more wounded than the last time they saw him before he used Kawarimi. The copy Nin didn't have time to relax as a volley of shuriken emerged from the dwindling smoke. Unleashing his own projectiles, the silver-haired Jonin deflected each of them. Using his keen senses and Sharingan, he quickly spots Naruto's position within the forest trees and threw kunais tied with explosive notes. The blonde dodged all 6 kunais. As each of them impaled the tree, he saw the notes tied to them. Shit! Naruto jumped off the tree and landed a few meters away from his sensei. The tree that he was on a second ago soon exploded. He forced me out of hiding. Kyuso, I got to make a distraction. The blonde looked at Kakashi's calculating eyes and smirked. Sensei? Shinobi Tactical Knowledge Number 2. Genjutsu. Kakashi's eyes widened as Naruto began to go through a set of seals at a pace that he could barely keep up with, even with his Sharingan. The genin stopped and the last seal, Ninpu, Kokwanju no Jutsu. Darkness surrounded the copy Nin, obscuring everything from view. Using his Sharingan, he quickly dispelled the genjutsu. When everything came into view again, he found Naruto to be nowhere in sight. A voice rang throughout the trees, catching his attention. Shinobi Tactical Knowledge Number 3, Ninjutsu. 2 sources of chakra flared. Kakashi looked up to see 2 Narutos 50 feet in the sky, both of them going through the same seals. Ketan, Housenka no Jutsu, both cried out in unison. Fireballs began to rain down on the Jonin, who was hard-pressed on dodging the multiple balls of flame. What are you planning, Naruto? Dodging the last fireball, Kakashi looks around the empty field trying to find his student. A voice emanated once again, this time from behind. Suetun, Bakusue Shoha. A massive amount of water gushed out and covered a large portion of the training ground, flooding the area by at least a foot of water. What's he doing? Tenten asked her peers and the Jounins, all of which were sitting on branches of trees due to the water. Shikamaru looked at her and back to the fight before answering. He's setting up the field for Suetun Jutsus. Yeah, but the water also gives Kakashi the privilege to use Suetun as well. Shizune chipped in. Let's just see how things play out. Tsunade stated with finality. Everyone else silently agreed. Naruto and Kakashi both stood on the water 50 feet away from each other. Suddenly chunks of water started to rise slowly. Each formed into a human figure before becoming a copy of Naruto. Mizu Bunshin. There were about 100 of them surrounding Kakashi from all angles. 10 clones charged at him, quickly pulling out 2 kunais, 1 on each hand. Kakashi sliced 3 of them with 1 swing, dodging the attack from another clone before dispelling it with a stab. The remaining clones attacked together in a circle that surrounded the copy Nin. Kakashi spun himself as if performing Kaiten, using the kunais to slice the oncoming clones, destroying all of them. The Jounin looked around the clones that infested area, all of them ready to charge at him. There's too many of them, I guess I'll have to use that technique. Good thing I've been working on increasing my chakra reserves lately. The white-haired Nin set his arms in an X shape as he gathered chakra. How about I turn it up a notch? What do you say, Naruto? Before a response could be heard, Kakashi's hands discharged a massive amount of chakra, his hands now both covered in lightning. Raikiri Nirentatsu. Naruto looks at him, mouth slightly opened. Kakashi sees this and smiles. You're not the only one learning new tricks during the years. The blonde composes himself and smirks. Let's see what you can do, sensei. Let's go. His remaining clones advanced towards Kakashi, who was thwarting each of them with relative ease. Naruto watched as his sensei slaughtered his clone army. Raikiri's blazing with life as it tore through each clone. Forming a seal, he cries out, Kagebunshin no Jutsu. A clone appeared beside him and nodded at the mental command he was given and disappeared into the rapidly decreasing platoon of clones. As Kakashi was finishing off the last 20 clones, Naruto began sealing. Swinging his Raikiri-empowered palm at the last clone, the Jonin caught his breath. But his victory over the Mizu Bunshins was short-lived as Naruto cried out, "Suetun! Suryuden no Jutsu!" The water near Naruto erupted, forming the shape of a dragon that charged at Kakashi. Using his left hand, he met the oncoming attack with one of his Raikiri. Both forces canceled each other out. Suetun! Suryuden no Jutsu! The copy Nin turned around and saw another water dragon. With his remaining Raikiri, he thrusts it towards the torrent. Both attacks once again canceled each other. Kakashi looked to where the attack originated and only saw a small layer of smoke that was dissipating and frowned. Kagebunshin. Moving his gaze to Naruto, Kakashi went through his own set of seals. Suetun! Daibakufu no Jutsu! A massive spiraling blast of water sped towards the blonde. Kyuso. His hands automatically sprang into action. Suetun! Suijin Hiki. The water around Naruto shot up, creating a barrier. Both jutsus then collided in a giant blast of water. The surrounding area was soaked from the clashing techniques and drops of water rained down. As the temporary rain of water stopped, both fighters could be seen struggling against each other, kunais in hand. Kakashi's right hand gripped his kunai tightly as Naruto's own kunai pressed against his. The blonde looked at his sensei before smirking. "I got you." Using his free hand, Naruto pointed his palm to Kakashi's midsection. Futon, Daitapa. Kakashi felt a powerful explosion of wind knock him back with the force of a boulder. The gushing winds slammed him into a tree, imprinting his figure onto its trunk. Slowly raising himself up, the copy Nin shook himself of his dizziness before his mind tried to make sense of what just happened. No seals at all. It seems his affinity for wind is higher than I thought. This is going to get tricky. Ji-sensei, what just happened? Well, Lee, it seems Naruto-kun blew Kakashi away by his flames of youth. Ji-sensei. Lee. Student and sensei once again hugged each other with excess passion, sickening the others around them. Is his affinity really that high? I mean, to be able to do futon without seals. Is that possible? Sakura asked her mentor. Tsunade nodded in reply. Yes, it's possible to control an element to an extent if you have the affinity for it. Gaara and his sand is a perfect example. The Jounins and Chunins accepted the explanation, but the two Sanins shared a thought. Still, using no seals at all for a jutsu that originally requires it. I can't even do that. Coming out of his daze, Kakashi ran through seals again. Suetun! Suishoha! A large body of water came to life and sprang towards Naruto, who was eyeing the attack. He narrowed his eyes at the water before countering. Hayutan! Kakerubo Fuzetsu! An icy black dragon with red eyes shot from the blonde's arms and into the rushing tidal wave. As the two attacks met, the water began to freeze as the ice dragon continued to pierce through the attack. A large dome of ice now stood on where the two attacks confronted each other. Kakashi shunshined atop the dome and locked eyes with Naruto. So he knows Hayutan too. You've grown well, Naruto. His Sharingan eye began to spin as his hands went through a familiar set of seals. Hayutan! Kakeryubo Fuzetsu! Naruto's eyes widened as he saw his own attack copied and now charging at him. Should have seen this coming. He's not known as the copy ninja for nothing. Katan! Karyu Enden! A jet of flame in the form of dragon shot out of the genin's mouth. The two dragons, one of ice and the other of fire, clashed head-on. Fire melting ice, and ice extinguishing fire. Both attacks soon dissipated into nothingness. Kakashi jumped down to the still flooded grounds and landed 10 meters away from Naruto. The copy Nin looked at his student with his blazing Sharingan eye. Let's see what you got, Naruto. The blonde smiled at his sensei. Futon! Atsugai! A massive gust of wind flew towards Kakashi, splitting the water as it reaches its target. Suetun! Daibaku no Jutsu! A large vortex of water sprang up and canceled the oncoming jutsu at the last second. Kakashi then sensed chakra behind him and ducked as 2 bullets of water flew past him at high speed. Turning around, he spies Naruto and slams his hands down onto the surface of the water. Doton, Doryuden. A large dragon head made of mud appeared next to Kakashi. The dragon opened its mouth and launched mud balls at Naruto. The blonde dodged the first volley of mud projectiles. Another one came right after it, followed by another. Need to take that dragon out. After dodging another volley, he set his sights on the mud dragon with Kakashi nowhere in sight. I'll worry about that later. Hayutan, Haryu Moko. A large tiger of ice charged at the mud dragon, freezing the water it traveled on. Both jutsus crashed onto each other, leaving only frozen earth and water as an end result. Naruto then looked around. His sensei was nowhere in sight. Suddenly the water below him began to rumble and splash around violently. Suetun, Debakure no Jutsu. The blonde's eyes widened. Shit! A maelstrom formed below him and started to drag him down. Enforcing his feet with extra chakra, Naruto tried to escape, but to no avail. No choice. Stopping his struggle, his body started to sink down at a faster rate. Kakashi questioningly stared at Naruto from a tree branch. What are you doing? His question was answered as Naruto's hands rested on a seal before crying out, Futon, Tatsu no Ashigoto. A tornado formed from the sky and reached down to the maelstrom of water. The force of their collision shook the grounds as heavy winds and gallons of water whipped about. Kakashi and the other Jounins, Sanins and Chunins enforced their feet with chakra, sticking onto the trees as heavy winds threatened to blow them away. The winds started to die out. Kakashi stared at the field. A huge crater formed in the field, drawing in the water that flooded the grounds, forming a small lake. He saw Naruto on a tree branch, his clothes soaked, but other than a few new cuts he was fine. Suddenly the air behind him began to feel hot. Turning around, Kakashi saw an oncoming fireball headed towards him. Katan, Gukakyu no Jutsu. The copy Nin quickly jumped off the tree and back onto the now muddy field. He quickly spotted 2 Narutos standing on the lake, both of them sealing. Suetun, Suryuden no Jutsu. Katan, Karyu Enden. A dragon of water and another one of flame shot out and headed towards Kakashi, both forces combined in a tight helix. Ninpu, Daryu Enden. Kakashi gawked at the combination attack. Shaking his head, he jumped to the right by 10 feet, avoiding the attack. The stream of fire and water streaked through the forest, destroying everything in its way before bending itself backwards and headed once again at the copy Nin. Kakashi's eyes widened before he shined away from the attack, reappearing on top of a tree branch. Once again, the attack redirected itself towards the Jounin and came upon him at a faster speed. Kakashi quickly slammed his palms to the ground. Doton, Dochuigyo no Jutsu. At the same moment that he slapped the ground, the attack crashed down on him, resulting in a giant explosion which left a 20-foot crater. Naruto stuck onto a nearby tree staring at the damage. As the smoke cleared, he found no remains of his sensei, so he escaped below. I need to flush him out. Stretching out his right hand, he began to form a Rasengan. The blue orb of chakra rested on his palm. More chakra. Pumping in more power, the ball of rotating chakra started to grow in size and its color went from light blue to a dark shade of indigo. This should do it. Jumping off the tree, he descended with a powered-up Rasengan in hand, upon the crater that Kakashi was formerly on before he disappeared. Odama Rasengan. The attack deepened the already existing crater and ruptured the surrounding grounds, causing chunks of land to spring forth. Kakashi emerged from one of the rocks that sprung up due to the attack, his eyes the size of dinner plates. What the hell? Jiraiya-sama, I understand Naruto learning taijutsu and ninjutsu at an advanced level, but that technique took the cake. Naruto spotted Kakashi staring at him with glazed eyes. Sensei, catching Kakashi's attention, I found you. The Jounin and his student locked eyes. After a moment passed, both of them ran through seals. Katan, Zukaku. Doton, Doryahiki. Raitun, Raryu Enden. Hayutan, Haryu Moko. Hayutan, Tsubame Fubuki. Kanai Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Suitun Teppadama. Katan. Hausenka no Jutsu. Suitun, Hahanryu. Suitun. Suikoden no Jutsu. Raitun Jan. Suitun. Kaihoden. The onlookers stared at the jutsus flying about, their heads turning left and right as each jutsu was announced. Looks like Kakashi's chakra reserves have gained quite a bit, Jiraiya stated as Naruto spewed out a katan, Karyuenden, at Kakashi, who countered. Yeah, hard to believe, being as lazy as Shikamaru and all. Asuma replied as he lit a cigarette which was extinguished quickly by splash of water by one of Kakashi's Suitun jutsus. Shikamaru glared at his cancer-smoking sensei before sighing, troublesome. Knowing Naruto, this may take a while. Niji thought out loud as his Byakugan kept an eye on the two battling Nins. No, Jiraiya said, catching everyone's attention. Increased reserved Kakashi may have. He's going to run out before Naruto in this battle of attrition. I bet you that he's planning to end this soon. Raitun. Raryu no Tatsumaki? Both sensei and student cried out in unison. Two tornadoes of lightning confronted each other, battling for dominance but to no avail as both dissipated in a stalemate. Kakashi and Naruto stood 60 feet from each other, their surroundings charred, crushed and soaked from their jutsu battle. Both Nins were breathing for a bit of air, Kakashi more than Naruto. Almost out of chakra, I need to end this now. The copy Nin mused while looking at his student who was faring better than he was. Naruto, let's raise the stakes. One last charge, winner take all. The blonde Jonin smirked. Show me what you got, sensei. Kakashi set his right arm pointing down while his left hand held his right wrist. Better be ready for the chakra depletion I'm going to get after this battle. Sunona no Yuri Raikiri. An enormous discharge of chakra, larger than the one before, emerged from Kakashi's right hand as lightning wrapped around it once again. This time the lightning was significantly stronger as nearby grass dried and the ground below the copy Nin became scorched. The color of the lightning seemed almost purple in color instead of its normal blue. Naruto looked in wonder at his sensei and his jutsu. This is my first and true Raikiri, Kakashi stated, answering the questioning look on his student's face. So my eternal rival has pulled out his ace, Guy shouted in glee. All of them were now sitting near the three training posts again since the ground has dried due to Naruto and Kakashi's Raitun and Ketan jutsus. The true Raikiri? I've never seen it, Kurenai mused. Well, that makes most of us, Shizen replied as Asuma, Genma, Sakura, Shikamaru and Team Guy nodded. Been a while since I've seen him use that, Tsunade said as she turned to her teammate. Yeah, the last time he's done it was in the Third Great Shinobi War, Jiraiya mused. Tsunade moved closer to the Gama-Sannin and whispered, seems he's not using his dojutsu. I don't think he wants to reveal it yet, most likely to avoid the multitude of questions and problems he may get later on, he replied. That or he's saving it as a last resort, the slug Sannin stated. Naruto stared curiously at the jutsu that Kakashi had in hand. Should I use the Sharingan and intercept or use Otama Rasengan again? I don't want to show my Kekai Genkai yet, and using Otama Rasengan against his powered-up Raikiri is going to have consequences on both of us. What to do? Wait, I can use that technique. Extending his right arm out with his palms open, he started to gather chakra. Kakashi and the onlookers, excluding Jiraiya, stared in awe as a sword of wind formed in Naruto's hands. Kaze no Rasenyeba. The white-haired Jonin focused on Naruto, who was preparing to strike. Kakashi charged at him, Raikiri tearing and scorching the ground below. The blonde reached into his pouch and gripped a three-tipped kunai and flung it at Kakashi with immense force. The Jonin, seeing an incoming projectile aimed at his head, quickly tilted his head while continuing to advance. The kunai flew past him and stuck itself into a tree a foot behind Kakashi. Naruto quickly charged right in front of Kakashi the moment he dodged the three-pronged kunai. His Kaze no Rasenyeba clashed with Kakashi's Raikiri, causing sparks of lightning fly and gusts of winds blow through the trees. For a minute, the two attacks seemed to be in a stalemate, but soon Naruto's sword began to lose its form. Seeing this, Kakashi looked at his student who showed no emotion. This struggle is useless, Naruto. My Raikiri is dominating your jutsu. Naruto smirked at his sensei. Whoever said that I was going to overpower your Raikiri? Kakashi's eyes widened as Naruto disappeared in a flash of yellow and blue. Before the Jonin can comprehend the situation, a blade of wind was pitted near his neck. Naruto stood behind him, Kaze no Raseneba pitted to Kakashi's neck on one hand, and the three-pronged kunai he threw earlier in the other. Kiroi Senko no Jutsu, Hiraishin no Jutsu. This technique, how? Kakashi then spotted the three-pronged kunai and remembered the projectile he dodged earlier upon charging at Naruto. I see, excellent tactic, you've surpassed me already, Naruto. It seems I won, any sensei? Naruto stated as he deactivated his jutsu. Kakashi did the same with his Raikiri and looked at his student. Yes, you have, Naruto, yes you have. Kakashi's eyes formed an upside-down U shape, indicating him smiling. The two looked at each other before both erupted in a bit of laughter. Tsunade's voice caught the two Nin's attention. The winner of this exhibition is Uzumaki Naruto. Tsunade and Jiraiya, along with everyone else, began to walk towards Kakashi and Naruto. The blonde genin sat himself down onto a fallen log and stared at the clouds. I need some ramen. Chapter 5, Ranks and Duties. Naruto sighed as he leaned on a branch of a tree that was trashed down with his fight against Kakashi. Looking at the oncoming crowd consisting of his friends and acquaintances, he couldn't help but think that promoting to Jounin would result in being drowned by work. After he saw Kakashi fill out a report after the mission from Wave, which consisted of an inch worth of paper, he wasn't quite sure if he wanted that much workload on him. Things are going to get so troublesome, he sighed once again. HM? Well, if I hadn't fought you myself, I would have thought you became lazy during your training trip with that statement of yours. We already have a Shikamaru. We definitely don't need another. Kakashi said while flipping a page in his perverted orange book. Ika idle. It's not that I'm being lazy. It's just that, never mind. Oh hey, I got a present for you, sensei, the blonde said while reaching into his shuriken pouch. You're definitely going to like this, knowing you. The white-haired Nin raised his head out of his book and looked at his student. His one visible eyebrow arched in interest. What does he mean by that? Where the hell are you? Ah, here it is, behold Kakashi-sensei, the newest addition to the Ika series. Ika Late Nights. Naruto held out an orange book, its letters of Ika glowing in gold. The group of Chunins, Jounins, and Sanins, who were only a few meters at the time, overheard this interesting piece of information, causing the Kunoichis to quickly glare at Jiraiya, a malicious aura rolling off them in waves. The silver-haired Sannin gulped and unconsciously took a step back away. Jiraiya, tell me? The slug Sannin cracked her knuckles. What the hell did you do to him? Wait, Tsunade, I can explain, the Gamma Sannin frantically said while sweating bullets at his slowly approaching former teammate. You turned him into a pervert? The Kunoichis cried out in unison. Soon a chakra-enhanced fist met Jiraiya's face and sent him flying towards Kakashi, who dodged his body by stepping towards Naruto. Naruto, how? When? Can I? The Sharingan Jounin asked while ignoring the cursing he was hearing from Jiraiya's direction. Well, Erosenin gave it to me about a year and a half ago, telling me it's a good way to kill time while recuperating from training. At first I was hesitant, but there was one day when I was training on Suetun and Kenjutsu with Kagebunshin for a day and a half straight that I quickly wiped out my reserves and had to rest the most of the next day because of severe chakra exhaustion. Naruto paused, taking a breath, and looked at Kakashi, who was eagerly listening. He also spied the others trying to hear their conversation, but ignored them. Anyway, during the time I was resting, he gave me the book telling me that I had nothing better to do. At first I didn't even want the book to exist, but lying down all day got really boring. So I decided to listen to him that one time and opened up the pages of that smut for literature. Hey, those books are a work of art, shouted Jiraiya, whose body couldn't be seen due to the rubble that he was buried in. But the tiny shaking of the fallen trees that piled on top of him proved that he was still alive, for now. The blonde genin glared at the direction of his Sannin sensei, annoyed at being interrupted. By now Tsunade and the others have gathered around both Naruto and Kakashi, all of whom listening to the conversation. Though the kunoichis seemed to be twitching and casting glares to where Jiraiya is. Moving on, you can say that after recovering from massive blood loss due to nosebleeds, I actually found the book quite interesting. I can see why you like Ika. Not a bad read when you get past the smut. Ha! So the Gaki has finally seen the light that is Ika. I couldn't be more proud of my student. The Gama Sanin finally dragged himself out of the rubble, shaking off the dirt from his clothes. But he was interrupted by multiple kunais, dozens of poison needles, a painful genjutsu, featuring yaoi, and 2 superpowered fists that sent him spiraling down to the ground again. Each of the male shinobis cast sympathetic looks at Jiraiya and felt a bit of fear from their female comrades, all whom surrounded the perverted Sanin's fallen body with evil glares. Kakashi quickly looked back at the book his student was holding out. "See, can I?" Naruto looked at his sensei with a foxy grin. "Well, I did say I have a present for you, didn't I?" Upon hearing that answer, the Jonin grabbed the book and held the blonde in a tight embrace. "Naruto, I want to tell you that I always loved being your sensei." The other's sweat dropped at this display. Wose, Kakashi has finally accepted the flames of youth. Guy shouted enthusiastically. Lee was about to join in but was stopped when Kakashi sent a "I will castrate you" look to the spandex-wearing duo. Taking her eyes off her former teammate and to the other males, Tsunade, deciding to punish Jiraiya later and focus on the task at hand, cleared her throat, catching everyone's attention. "Now then, let's get to business." The group of Nins settled down and set their eyes on their Hokage. You, Asuma, Kurenai, Guy, Genma, and Kakashi have seen Naruto's performance today. What is your opinion on his ranking? Naruto adopted an emotionless face and looked at the Jounins. Shikamaru, Sakura, Shizune, and Team Guy also stared in silence as they were awaiting the verdict. Asuma was the first to speak. "I, Asuma Sarutobi, a proctor of this match, accept Uzumaki Naruto to the Jounin ranks." Kurenai followed. "I, Yuhi Kurenai, the second proctor, accept Uzumaki Naruto to our ranks." "I, the beautiful beast of Konoha, Mado Guy, the most youthful of proctors, accept Naruto-kun to join us." Guy shouted, doing his infamous nice guy pose, his teeth sparkling unnaturally, blinding his comrades. "Leave it to Guy-sensei to brighten things up," Naruto mused. "It's moments like these that I wish I didn't have." The Byakugan Niji groaned at his sensei's display. Taking out the sunbon from his mouth, Gunma came next. "I, Shiranui Gunma, another proctor, accept Uzumaki Naruto to the ranks." All eyes turned to Kakashi, who was giggling at his newly acquired book. The Jounin felt a spike of killer intent and looked up from his read to see Tsunade glaring at him with a "I will burn that piece of crap literature" look. Needless to say, Kakashi quickly put away his precious book to the safe confines of his shuriken pouch. Clearing his throat, his face became serious before replying, "I, Hatake Kakashi, the examiner, accept my student, Uzumaki Naruto, to the ranks." "Are these final?" Tsunade cautiously asked. The Jounins remained quiet, silently answering her question. The blonde Hokage looks at Naruto, whose face was emotionless, but his eyes were taking in the whole situation. "Well then, Naruto." The blonde genin looked to Tsunade, who had a smile on her facade. "Congratulations. As of now, you are a Jounin of Konoha. Be proud of your accomplishment." The group cheered at Naruto's success while he himself was grinning widely at his promotion. "Yosh, Naruto-kun's youth has surpassed mine. I must now train harder to become as youthful," Lee cried while copying Guy's pose, smiling at Naruto. The blonde stared at his Chunin friend. His attention was focused on Lee's attire. "By Kami, he resembles Guy even more, right when I thought the similarities couldn't get any more similar. Just what the hell has been going on when I was gone?" "Congratulations, Naruto. I expected this from you," Niji said while having a hint of smile on his lips. The newly appointed Jounin looked at his Hyuga friend, his attire, and also caught the blonde's attention. "Niji, the only thing you need is a pair of breasts along with a more feminine voice, and you can pass on for a decent chick. Though you'd probably hack me into next month if I said that." Naruto just smiled at Niji, the latter oblivious to the Jinchuriki's thoughts. Tenten came up next by patting the blonde on the back. You gave us quite a show there, Naruto-kun. You want to have a kenjutsu spar sometime? It looks like you're pretty good with your wind sword. Naruto gave a lady killer grin to Tenten, which didn't go unnoticed by the others. I'd like that. I also want to see how well you do with a sword, Tenten-chan. The Chunin blushed at his suggestive answer and to the chan suffix. The gathered shinobis gawked at the blonde. Some raised their eyebrows in amusement. Mainly the males, others blushed slightly, mainly the kunoichis. Naruto, I don't know if I should be proud or be pissed that you're surpassing me also in the women department. Kakashi silently wept, his anime tears hidden by his book. Shinaro, what the hell was that? That's definitely not the Naruto from before. Sakura was lost in her thoughts due to the actions of her teammate. Heh, keep that charm up, Gaki, and you'll have fangirls and fanwomen. Tsunade mused. Man, Naruto, you just became more troublesome. Shikamaru smiled at his blonde friend who grinned back. Nice to see you too, Shika. Still getting nagged by your mom and Ino for being a lazy ass? He chuckled. Troublesome women, the lazy Chunin sighed, sitting himself down on the same tree as Naruto. Sakura stepped up closer to her blonde teammate. Congrats, Naruto, she said nervously. Thanks, Sakura, he hesitantly replied. The kunoichi felt a pang in her heart to the lack of chan in her name. The missing suffix also didn't go unnoticed by the others. The two teammates of Team 7 just stared at each other. Silence filling the area and a feeling of awkwardness was present in the air. Jiraiya, who was now standing up from his crater, decided to break the tension. All right, that's enough with the congratulations. I believe you have some things to say, Tsunade. The blonde Hokage sent a grateful look at her former teammate, who leaned himself onto a nearby tree as the tension broke. Noticing that all eyes were on her, she spoke. Yes, I do. Naruto, come to my office at 6 p.m. That's about an hour from now, Kakashi. I need you there as well. Guy Asuma, Kurenai, Genma, you're dismissed. As for you, Sakura, your shift at the hospital has already started, so I suggest you hurry. That is all. Hi! The Jounins, with the exception of Niji, replied, all of them using Shunshin, disappearing from sight. Tsunade-sama. Sakura looked at her sensei, who had an apologetic look. I'm sorry, Sakura, but you're already late by 20 minutes. We don't have anyone to cover up for you right now. I'm sorry. Shizen, go with her, please. The slug Sanin looked at the brunette medic Nin, who nodded knowingly. Hi, Tsunade-sama. Come, Sakura, putting a hand on Sakura's shoulder. The pink-haired kunoichi turned her head to her teammate. Naruto, it's good to see you're back. Before he could give a reply, both medic Nins disappeared in a puff of smoke. Naruto stared at the dissipating wisps of smoke. Yeah, glad to be back, Sakura. Closing his eyes, he sighed before standing up from the tree and started to stretch his arms. Well, since I don't have to meet you in an hour, I'm going to get something to eat at Ichiraku. Hey, wait, Lee, and I will join you on your way. We're heading to Training Ground 14, and that's on the same direction as Ichiraku anyway. Tenten said, looking to Naruto, who had an eyebrow raised. YOSH. We can now ask Naruto-kun about his youthful travels. Lee yelled, pumping a fist in the air. I might as well tag along, seeing as training with Hayashi-sama isn't until 3 hours from now. Niji replied while eyebrows twitching at Lee's continuous ranting. Well, I got to go. Chuji and Ino are meeting me at Chuji's favorite barbecue place. Don't want Ino being troublesome just because I'm a little late. Shikamaru yawned, giving a wave to his friends before he disappeared in a whirl of leaves. Wait, Naruto, Tsunade said with a demanding voice. The blonde looked up at the Hokage. What's up? The slug Sanin took out a scroll from one of her pockets and tossed it to Naruto, who quickly caught it. Here's the address to your new apartment. Your old apartment complex was torn down by severe flooding during a storm that hit about half a year ago. All the things that weren't lost have been moved to your new apartment and new furniture has been added. Open the chakra seal inside the scroll to get the keys to your new home. Alright, if that's all, then I'll see you later, Bachan, he said as he and Team Guy blurred out of the forest. Tsunade had a tick on her forehead due to irritation from her surrogate brother. Damn brat. Even with all that maturity, he still calls me by that damn name. At least he doesn't call you Erosenin, Jiraiya replied while opening his eyes and looked at his fuming teammate. Whatever. Come on Jiraiya, I need some sake to relieve myself from all this stress. The slug Sannin grabbed his arm, dragging him out of the training grounds. I don't think that drinking is wise, not at this early hour. We can't have an irate, drunk Hokage running Konoha now, can we? Jiraiya replied, wincing from the tight grip Tsunade had on his arm. Shut up. Naruto and Team Guy walked down the street, all of them in a conversation on the happenings in Konoha during Naruto's absence. They came to a stop at the blonde's favorite ramen stand, Ichiraku's, which was now larger than the last time he was here. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you that this place renovated when you were gone. Apparently they added other foods on their menu when their #1 customer temporarily left. The variety they have along with their good prices brought in a lot of people. Tenten said, answering Naruto's unspoken question. The blonde just nodded in response while looking at the new Ichiraku. Instead of a stand, it was now the size of a small restaurant. There were a dozen of tables inside with 5 chairs on each table. The counter now extended from the outside and arches into the restaurant, adding more seats for customers. Behind the counter was Ayam with a cash register, and farther in was the kitchen, which was hidden by a curtain, but a silhouette of her father could be seen. All right Naruto, we'll see you later, Tenten said, while Lee did a pose bidding farewell and Neji just waved his hand. The blonde continued to look at the retreating backs of his friends until they were gone from the horizon. Well, time to eat some ramen. It's been a while since I've ate any. Walking towards the counter, he spotted Ayam busy counting money while inputting it into the register. Hearing one of the chimes attached to the flaps near the entrance signaling a newly arrived customer, she spoke, while not raising her head. Welcome to Ichiraku's. I'll be with you in a moment. It's alright Ayamane, just admiring with what you've done with the place at the moment. Seems you guys have been doing well the past 3 years, any? A familiar voice replied. Her hands nearly dropped the ryu she was counting. Slowly turning her head to the voice, she saw a familiar blonde gently smiling at her. And Naruto? She stuttered. Walking up to the counter next to her, his right hand cupped her chin, which caused her to blush slightly. The one and only. Before Naruto could react, he was trapped in a tight hug from Ayam. The slight smell of miso ramen whiffed his nose. Wonder if she also tastes like miso. And oh, bad hentai thoughts. Bad. Steeling himself, he gently broke himself from the embrace and smiled at the ramen cashier. So how are things, Ayamane? Things have been quiet without you. I'm glad you're back. Wait here. Ayam left towards the kitchen where her father was cooking. Naruto didn't have to wait long as a loud voice boomed from the kitchen. What? A man in his 40s came out of the kitchen and rushed to the blonde who was seated calmly at the counter. Tsuchi stopped right in front of Naruto, eyeing the blonde before giving him a pat in the shoulder with a smile. It's about time my #1 customer got back. Things weren't the same without you, kid. The ramen chef heartily laughed. It's good to be back, old man. I like what you've done with the place. The blonde replied while motioning his hands at the restaurant. Yeah, well, I didn't know that adding a few things to the menu and diet ramen would bring in a lot of business. Anyway, enough about that. What are you having? He eagerly asked. Bring me 3 bowls of miso ramen, old man, Naruto heartily replied. Coming right up, Tsuchi chuckled while happily walking back to the kitchen. As her father began working on Naruto's ramen, Ayam took her time to look at the blonde's changes over the years. She noticed his blonde cherubic face was now replaced with an angular and mature facade. The baby fat in his body all gone, revealing a muscular and lean build. Along with his new wardrobe, she found herself fighting off a mild blush on her cheeks. Naruto caught Ayam staring at him from the corner of his eye and inwardly smirked at the blush that she was trying to cover up. He found it slightly amusing that he was having these effects on women, something he didn't have prior to leaving Konoha. Deciding to tease her a little more, he turned his head and locked eyes with her. Like what you see, Ain? The blonde smirked. The blush that she was valiantly fighting off rushed out in full force, her mind racing a mile a minute before rushing to the kitchen. Naruto chuckled at the sight of the retreating ramen cashier. Hiro-sensei was right, Seduction can be a very effective tool on the opposite sex. He mused while reminiscing about his training days. A minute later, both Ayam and Tucci came out with Naruto's order, the former still sporting a slight blush. "Enjoy, kid. These are on the house as a welcome-back gift." The ramen chef smiled at the slightly drooling blonde. "Thanks, old man, itade kamasu," he hungrily replied. Naruto dug in on his first bowl. Though he wasn't as feral and savage with his ramen as he was when he was younger, the food was still consumed in a fast rate. Ayam, from the cash register, looked on at the blonde whom was eating vigorously at his food. A smile came to her face. Even with his new changes, his love for ramen is at least the same. Good old Naruto-kun. Finishing the last bowl, he got up to take leave. Looking at Ayam one more time, he said his goodbye. "Arigato, Ayam-chan. The ramen is as good as ever. Tell the old man that I'll be back tomorrow. I have to meet Tsunade-chan in 40 minutes and I doubt that she'll like to see me with ragged clothes." His fingers pointed to the damage his clothes received due to his earlier fight with Kakashi. Ayam nodded and smiled in response as she watched him exit the restaurant. Following the directions from the scroll, Naruto set out to find his new home. 10 minutes of building hopping, he found himself in a middle-class area near the Hokage Tower. Slightly frowning, the blonde looked once again at the scroll. "Well, the directions say it's right here, so I guess I'll just look around a bit more." 2 minutes later, he found himself in front of an apartment room, numbered 66, of a large, decent complex that's 2 blocks away from the Hokage Tower. Pumping chakra into the seal within the scroll, a key emerged from a puff of smoke. Taking the key, he opened the door to his new apartment. The first thing he noticed was the smell of fresh pine and disinfectant, meaning that someone has cleaned the room not too long ago. The room was much larger than his old one. The latter was only meant for one person, but his new one had much more sufficient space. A decent-sized kitchen with an average fridge was set right next to the dining table. To the left of the dining table was a small bar counter and shelves to store in drinks. On the other side of the apartment was a quite large living room composed of 2 couches and a TV set. "I don't think I'm going to be watching television anytime soon, but thanks anyway, Bachan." He smiled gratefully at his appliance. Walking down further, he found himself in a small hallway. A guest bathroom to the left along with what seemed to be a spare bedroom/storage room right across it. Hitting the end of the hall, he found the main bedroom. It was nothing fancy, but it was much better than his old rundown apartment. A queen-size bed lay in the middle of the room with a night table to the side, with a lamp on top. Looking around, he spied some shuriken and kunai tools that he previously had laid on top of the table. A picture of Team 7 in their genin days propped right next to them. He smiled at the reminder of his good times in the past before resuming his tour. He spied a door and opened it to find a bathroom slightly larger than the guest restroom. "Guess I'll wash up before I go. I still have close to half an hour, sufficient time." Taking out a slightly large scroll from his shuriken pouch, he opened it, revealing a blood seal. Nicking his thumb with his slightly elongated canines, he ran his blood through the seal. An audible pop was heard and a large bag appeared. Naruto opened the bag and took out clothes similar to the ones he was wearing along with a dozen of scrolls. He opened the closet next to the bathroom door and set down his clothing along with his scrolls. Taking out a towel, he entered the bathroom and closed the door behind him. "I got to thank Bachan. This apartment is definitely better than the last one." "So what are you planning to do with the Council, Tsunade?" Jiraiya asked his teammate while leaning against the wall of the Hokage office. "I'm going to get them to see the truth. They were always neutral to Naruto, so hopefully they will listen to reason." She sighed, leaning on her chair, taking a swig of sake from her saucer. "Yeah, with Danzo's death, things have been pretty quiet and rather peaceful with the council. Things should be easier for now," he replied while sipping his own sake. Hopefully it would stay that way, though. Tsunade was cut off by a knock from her door. The door opened, revealing the Chunin Izumo, Kotetsu's friend. "Hokage-sama, Naruto-san is here to see you." "Send him in," she said with a dismissive wave. Izumo bowed before leaving the room. Tsunade finished of her sake before throwing the bottle to the garbage. "At least he hasn't become lazy and late like Kakashi." Jiraiya chuckled before finishing his own alcohol beverage. A minute later, the door opened again, revealing Naruto in fresh clothing. The blonde walked up in the middle of the room before smiling. All right, Bachan, what do you need me for? A vein throbbed at the Hokage's forehead, and before anyone could blink a paperweight made its way towards Naruto at great speeds. The said blonde quickly caught the projectile an inch before it made contact with his face. Don't call me that. Hi, Tsunade-sama, Naruto replied while setting the paperweight on her desk. Tsunade reached out from a rather large drawer, taking out a Jonin vest. She handed it to the other blonde, who gratefully took it from her. Taking off his blue robe-like cape, he put on the dark green vest, which fitted perfectly in his opinion, before donning on his robe cape back on. So how do I look? He curiously asked. You look you're ready to steal hearts of women if you want my opinion. Jiraiya chuckled. Tsunade sent a small glare to her teammate before looking back at Naruto. It looks good on you, Naruto. Welcome to being a Jounin. Arigato Bachan. Oh hey, nice apartment you got me. It's a major improvement from my last one, he said with a smile on his face. Glad you like it, brat. Anyway, Kakashi better not be late or else I'll. Tsunade was once again cut off as the said Jounin appeared in a puff of smoke. Yo, he said, raising his hand in a wave. Naruto chuckled slightly as Jiraiya snickered at Kakashi and Tsunade, the former confused at their exchange. Recovering from slight embarrassment, the blonde Godame cleared her throat, silencing everyone. Kakashi, glad you can make it on time. I need you to show Naruto the regulations, meeting places and lounges for Jounin, seeing as he's still new to his rank. She spoke while eyeing the attentive Nin. Hi Tsunade-sama. Come on Naruto, might as well show you some friends of mine first, as you might be seeing them often from now on, especially on missions, Kakashi said, turning his gaze to his former student. Hi, the blonde replied, walking with the white-haired Nin out the door. Before he exited the room, he turned his head to Tsunade and Jiraiya, bidding them farewell. I'll see you around, Bachan, Ero Sennin. The door closed, leaving the two Sanins alone once again in the office. Jiraiya sat himself down onto a chair near the Hokage's desk. Reaching inside his pockets, he retrieved a scroll and set it down on the table. Here's a report from Hiro about his time with Naruto that I just got from the Gaki himself today. It explains all that he's done and includes his training and missions he's accepted and done, he said. Tsunade sighed as she eyed the report in front of her. Just what I need, more work. Grabbing a large jug of sake from her desk compartment, she poured the alcohol into her saucer before downing it in one motion. This is going to be a long night. Jiraiya grabbed the jug and poured himself some sake, sipping it down slowly. Be lucky I'm here helping you. I could be doing my research right now, he said indignantly. The blonde Hokage glared at her companion. Shut up, pervert. The sound of rushing winds howled through the mountains as a kunoichi dashed down the mountain at top speed. A cloud Hittite on her forehead shined from the moonlight and was the only thing that could be distinguished, as the rest was a blur of indigo. Kyuso, they were able to still overpower me even with Nakomata. I can't afford to get captured and I can't let them into Kumo. Forgive me, Nagisama, but I need to leave Kumogakure for the time being. She was cut off from her thoughts as a three-bladed scythe swung right in front of her. Bending her body back, she dodged the blade by a hair. Tage, thought you could get away? A voice rang out from the darkness. Two figures appeared on top of a large rock right in front of her, cutting her off. Both figures had matching black cloaks with a design of red clouds. One had dark silver hair slicked back. The other had a Hittite of Takigakure, his face hidden by his cloak. You really need to work on your speed, Haiden. That was pitiful, the missing Nin from Takigakure said to his partner. Shut the hell up, Kakuzu. It's because you screwed up that she was able to run away, the silver-haired Nin known as Haiden replied. In the end, we have her cornered. Let's get this one done soon. I'd like to go after someone with an actual bounty on their head, he replied. That's all you care about, your freaking money, Haiden said while retrieving his scythe via the rope he has strapped on his arm. The kunoichi readied herself for battle, drawing two kunais and gripping one in each hand. Yujito. Nibi. Run, they're too strong for you. But where to run to? I've used up nearly all my reserves and I can't handle any more of your chakra after that transformation. She was brought out of her musing as Haiden's scythe once again soared to her direction. Jumping to her right, she avoided the weapon, but this set her at Kakuzu's line of fire. Two masks held by hundreds of black thread that attached to Kakuzu's back emerged, each gathering chakra. Futon Atsugai. Raitun John. The two masks each blasted a powerful elemental force that headed straight to Yujito. The kunoichi was about to avoid the blow but was held down by Haiden. "You idiot! Are you trying to kill yourself?" she shrieked. Haiden maniacally laughed before replying, "That would be true, but you see I can't die. Well, more like I won't die. Don't worry, you won't die either, bitch, at least not yet." The two jutsus were dangerously near the Jinchuriki. Unable to escape the Akatsuki member's hold on her, she shut her eyes, readying herself for the pain. A large explosion lit the night before all that remained was smoke. Kakuzu smirked at the dissipating smoke but was quickly gone when he saw Yujito unharmed. The kunoichi opened her eyes in confusion. She saw the land in front of her form into a crater. "I'm safe, but how? What the hell happened, Kakuzu?" Haiden yelled while still holding Yujito. "I happened." A gruff and familiar voice behind him answered. The silver-haired Nuke-nin turned around only to meet a blue fist ram itself in his face, forcing his hold on Yujito to loosen and sending him flying to a tree. Yujito looked at her savior in gratitude, but it quickly turned to distrust and confusion when she saw that he was also wearing an Akatsuki cloak. "What are you doing, Kisame?" Kakuzu asked, anger apparent in his voice. "I'm just being myself, you immortal freaks," he sneered. "Is disobeying orders being yourself? So you going traitor on the organization, fish freak?" Haiden yelled with malice as he was using his scythe to help him stand up from the tree he was punched to by Kisame. "It can't be called betrayal if we were never loyal to it from the start." Another voice spoke. A figure appeared in a whirl of leaves and revealed another Akatsuki member. This one had crimson-red eyes with tomo marks spinning rapidly. "So, going traitor to Uchiha?" Kakuzu said with venom. Yujito stared at the four Akatsuki members in confusion before yelling, What's going on?" Itachi looked at the female Jinchuriki emotionlessly. His gaze then turned to his partner, Kisame. The former Mist Nin nodded in response and hit Yujito on the back of the head, knocking her out. "I don't know what you two are planning, but you're not getting away," Kakuzu said as thousands of black threads emerged from his body. His body, now covered with the black wires, was doubled in size and two more masks emerged, totaling for altogether. "Lord Jashin shall have your blood." Haiden maliciously laughed as he readied his scythe to strike. Itachi set himself ready whilst Kisame unwrapped Samahata from its bandages. Silence ensued as the two teams looked at each other analytically. Haiden was once again about to throw his scythe when a white hand grabbed his shoulder from behind. He quickly glared at the figure behind him but was quickly displaced by confusion. "Zetsu? What are you doing here?" The Venus flytrap Nuke-nin looked at the four Akatsuki members before turning his steel gaze to Kisame and Itachi. "Shursho has sent me to deal with the traitors." Itachi looked at the Zetsu with his emotionless facade. He could make things a bit difficult, but still not a problem. "Heh, so it's 3-on-2, huh? Well, come on, you punks. Samahata's been itching for a fight," Kisame yelled charismatically. Zetsu smirked at the Kiri Nuke-nin before replying, "Make that 4-on-2. The other Akatsuki members were confused until a figure came out of the group of nearby trees. His face hidden by an odd orange mask that has a hole for his right eye. His body covered in all black clothing. "So you've brought your subordinate? His name was Tobi, right?" Kakuzu stated more than asked. Tobi nodded and replied, "It's good to see you, Kakuzu-san, Haiden-san, Itachi-san, and Kisame-san." The odd Nin bowed his head while Haiden glared at the newcomer. "Now's not the freaking time to be polite, damn it. The numbers are in our favor, so let's get this on. I will condemn them all in the name of Lord Jashin." His large scythe flew at Kisame at a fast speed. The Kiri Nuke-nin stepped to the side. Taking a hold on the attached rope, He pulled on it with his inhuman strength, causing Haydn to be thrown in the air and headed in his direction. The religion-devoted Nin didn't have time to react as he soared in the sky before Samahata cleaved across his upper body, sending him crashing to the mountainside. That idiot never thinks before he acts. Kakuzu sighed before sending his masks to attack Itachi. Futon Atsugai. Katan Bakufu. The futon boosted fire of one of the mask's jutsus, increasing its heat and speed as it headed towards Itachi. The Sharingan user stared impassively at the combination attack before his Sharingan spun rapidly. Manjikyu Sharingan. The three Tomo marks transformed to what looked like a three-bladed shuriken. Stealing his gaze, Itachi set his eyes on the oncoming attack. Amaterasu. A jet of black flames erupted from his eyes and enveloped Kakuzu's attack. The oncoming stream of dark flames pierced through and headed for Kakuzu. The said Akatsuki member's eyes widened slightly before jumping out of harm's way, narrowly avoiding the black flames that scorched and melted the earth. Kisame whistled at his partner's attack, but was suddenly on the defensive from a blow from Zetsu's kunais. The Kiri Nin was about to retaliate, but Haydn's scythe forced him to block. Seeing an opening, Zetsu sent powerful kick to Kisame's ribs, sending him skidding back a few meters. Heh, this is getting interesting. The shark-like Nin grinned, showing his razor-sharp teeth. Yes, too bad your end is now. A voice below him replied. Zetsu's hand sprouted from the ground and grasped Kisame's ankles tightly, limiting his mobility. Before he can set himself free, Haydn made his way to him, his scythe ready to swing. Kisame noticed Haydn's figure but was too late as he made his way to him. Shit! Die! The gray-haired Akatsuki member yelled as through his scythe with immense force. The projectile sliced through the air and headed towards the trapped Kisame, who was struggling to free himself from Zetsu. As the scythe was 3 meters from Kisame, a small clay bird made contact with the weapon, causing an explosion that deflected the blade and landing next to Itachi, who was facing off Tobi in taijutsu while countering Kakuzu's jutsus. What the hell? Haydn thought while retrieving his scythe. Now out of harm's way, Kisame, using his superior strength, grabbed one of Zetsu's hand and lifted him from the ground before sending an empowered punch to his stomach, sending him crashing to a tree 10 meters away. Zetsu slowly rose from the broken tree, slightly dizzy from the force of the attack. Suddenly 2 distinct chakra signatures flared. The group of Nins momentarily stopped their fighting and spied the new arrivals. A large clay bird descended from the sky and landed next to the unconscious form of Yujito. On top of it were 2 more Akatsuki members, one with long blonde hair and the other with short red hair. It seems we came just in time for a party, any Sasoridana? The blonde one asked his red-headed partner. Hi, right on time. Seems you're holding up pretty good there, Kisame Itachi. The redhead said. Che, what took you 2 so long, having an argument about art again? The Kiri Nuke Nin replied. Itachi looked at Kakuzu and smirked. Me, Kisame, Sasori and Deidara. The odds are even. Let's see how you fare against us now. Kakuzu cursed inwardly. It doesn't matter. You traitors will die here, he growled. Itachi had an amused look on his face, which infuriated him even more. What's so funny? Humph, fool, he replied, closing his eyes after. A second later, he reopened them and revealed his Manjikyu once again. Kakuzu accidentally locked eyes with his momentarily, but that was enough for Itachi. The wire-using Akatsuki member suddenly felt himself unable to steer his gaze off the weasel's eyes. Itachi smirked at Kakuzu, who was struggling with his Sharingan-induced Genjutsu. The dojutsu wielder's face became serious as his Manjikyu began to spin. One word left his mouth that sent terror into his Akatsuki opponent. Tsukiyomi. Chapter 6 of Betrayals. Darkness. Everything was nothing but a dark void. An empty world, cold and frightening. The world of Tsukiyomi. He has only heard of its powers, and now he himself has fallen victim to this jutsu. Looking around more, he finds himself chained tightly to a crucifix, leaving him open and vulnerable. His eyes landed in front of him where the man responsible for his predicament stood calmly. The traitorous weasel, Uchiha Itachi. Enjoying the view? The Sharingan wielder asks rhetorically. Fei, go screw yourself, Uchiha. You think this genjutsu can take me on? I've lived for centuries and experienced many things. My body can take on any torture you can give me. Your efforts are vain. Kakuzu spoke with a slightly amused tone. Yes, I see that, after almost all of your original body has been replaced, but there is one thing that has stayed with you, replied Itachi coolly. And what would that be? He replied with amusement still present in his voice. Pulling out his right arm from his Akatsuki cloak, Itachi pointed to his skull. Your head, or to be more specific, your brain. Kakuzu's eyes slightly widened, his amused attitude now replaced with dead seriousness and slight worry. And your point is? No matter how used to pain your body becomes, there is a limit to how much strain your mind can take, and your mind has been active for centuries, making it less resistant to strain. Itachi explained emotionlessly. That may be true, but there is no place in my body that can feel any pain or any feeling for that matter, so your plan has failed you, and you were supposed to be a genius. The restrained Akatsuki mocked. The dojutsu wielder felt a smirk cross his lips. Imbecile. Extending his right hand, an average katana materialized near his palm. As the sword came to focus, Itachi gripped it tightly before setting his eyes on Kakuzu once again. For 144 hours you will be stabbed. You truly are an idiot, Uchiha. I told you that would never work. Kakuzu snickered at the charging Sharingan user. Through the brain, Itachi finished. His taunts came to an abrupt end as a feeling spread throughout him, one that he hasn't felt in decades, pain. With a body unused to such a painful sensation due to having not felt it for years, Kakuzu was only able to do one thing, scream. Greya aha! His screams in agony continued as he spied the katana that Itachi wielded thrust through the middle of his head. The Uchiha's Sharingan eyes locked with Kakuzu's, the latter showing unbridled anger. Another smirk graced Itachi's face, this time though it was one of sadistic glee. The impaled Akatsuki member's eyes widened at the expression. His will to endure was tested when he heard the next words Itachi spoke. 141 hours, 59 minutes and 59 seconds to go. Kisame grinned wildly as he swung Samahata at Haiden, who frantically parried the sword with his scythe, locking both weapons together. I'm not hearing any of your "I'm Lord Jashin's bitch" speeches anymore. What's the matter? Shark got your tongue? He chuckled. Haiden would have spoke blasphemy about the mockery of his god and that bad pun if he wasn't putting everything he had to keep Samahata at bay. His scythe was worn and sustained heavy damage due to Kisame's inhuman strength, and Samahata's iron scales weren't helping either. Readjusting his grip on Samahata, Kisame pulled his sword backwards. The action resulted in Haiden's scythe to split in two due to Samahata shaving the bar. Smiling at the result, the former mist Nin didn't waste time and thrust his sword forward to Haiden's abdomen, causing the religious Nin to fly across 20 meters and slamming him onto a boulder. Shark Stud 1, Religious Dumbass 0. Zetsu eyed Sasori warily. Shinobis who use puppet jutsu were a tricky bunch, you never know what they have up their sleeves, and Sasori was probably the best, hands down. Why are you betraying the organization? What do all of you have to gain with this stunt of yours? Zetsu asked cautiously. Sasori stared at him blankly for a moment before replying, We have nothing to gain. Then why are you Zetsu spoke but was cut off by the red-haired puppeteer. But we have everything to lose. Zetsu narrowed his eyes at his opponent. Explain. Can you not see it? That your Shursho deems us as nothing more but expendable pawns to his desire. A voice behind the former grass Nin asked. Zetsu spun around and found Itachi making his way to him. Behind the Sharingan user was Kakuzu's limp body. Can you not see that we are not so willing to just be used as cannon fodder to his foolish desires of power? The Uchiha continued. Zetsu looked at him emotionlessly, but his eyes burned with intensity. Simpletons like you will never understand the beauty of his goal. His goal is to obtain power through the Bijus and to use it for his sick revenge. He's no better than Orochimaru. Itachi calmly replied. Do not compare Shursho with that damnable snake. Zetsu sneered. What will you do about it? You're outmatched and outclassed. Sasori spoke as he wielded a doll that resembled Sandaime Kazekage. The grass Nin quickly surveyed the situation. To the left was Toby in a near stalemate with Deidara in ninjutsu. To his right was Haiden doing everything he can to get the upper hand on Kisame, but was failing terribly. Finally, right behind Itachi was Kakuzu's fallen body. Whether the nuke Nin was dead or alive, he didn't know. Seeing Zetsu off guard, Sasori attacked with his puppet, pushing chakra into the lifeless figurine. Iron sand flooded out of it and encircled around him. Satetsu Shigure! The iron sand formed into small compact balls before shooting off at Zetsu with frightening speed. Sensing chakra, the grass Akatsuki member looked behind him only to see a multitude of iron bullets heading straight for him. Quickly flashing through seals, Zetsu cried out, "Doton, Doryuhiki!" Shooting a stream of mud from his mouth, Zetsu formed an earthen wall reinforced with chakra. Sasori stared impassively before smirking at his opponent's defense. "Sorry, but that won't work with me." The iron bullets pierced through the defensive wall, some scratching Zetsu's skin while others lodged into his body, causing the nuke Nin to drop his defense. "Mit!" he gasped as he struggled to keep himself up. "My iron sand is also poisonous. Even with your Kekai Genkai, you can't stop it from spreading. The best you can do is to prolong your death," Sasori said while making his way to him, Itachi following suit. Shit, must. Toby, Haiden, retreat," Zetsu wheezed while trying to back away from his two opponents. "What makes you think we'll let you get away?" Kisame yelled while heaving his sword to his shoulder. Using the last ounce of his strength, Zetsu shunshined next to Kakuzu's body, checking his fallen comrade. Still breathing. A slightly singed Toby and a heavily bleeding Haiden teleported next to the two. Zetsu looked at his subordinate, giving an unspoken command to which Toby complied. "Well, we have to go now, Itachi-senpai ja," Toby said while performing seals. His hand landed on the last seal, causing his body along with his comrades to dissolve into the ground. Before anyone can do anything, the Akatsuki members escaped. Itachi's Sharingan deactivated while Deidara and Sasori put away their respective artistic weapons. Kisame walked over to the trio with Samahata strapped to his back. "Let's not stay here for long. Kumo Umbu probably sensed all the chakra we used. It won't be long before they get here," Kisame reasoned. Deidara nodded and looked to Yujido's unconscious form. "What about her? Yeah? I mean, we did come all this way to make sure her bijou doesn't get extracted, yeah. Leave her. Let Kumo handle their shinobis," Sasori replied while leaning himself on a tall rock. Before anyone can say anything else, a figure rushed out from the trees on the mountain ledge. The said figure landed next to the former Akatsuki members, the moonlight shining onto his robes and his hat that had the kanji for lightning. "It seems our problems are solved," Itachi spoke emotionlessly while eyeing the newcomer. "How are you today, Sandame Reikage-sama?" The Reikage took of his hat, revealing a man in his early 40s with short, sand-colored hair with a trimmed brown mustache and short beard, though the most striking feature was his bronze eyes that glowed like the moon. A group of Umbu emerged and appeared next to the Reikage, each awaiting further orders. "To what honor do I have that 4 Akatsuki members are here in my territory with one of my shinobis unconscious?" he asked with a hint of anger in his voice. "Do not worry yourself, Reikage-sama. We have nothing to do with the current situation as we have detached ourselves from Akatsuki," Itachi replied, obviously the negotiator for the group. "And how can I believe your words?" he asked with suspicion. "For starters, you can have your kunoichi back. As you can see, there's no harm done, besides chakra exhaustion and small wounds from a battle she had with our acquaintances from the organization." The Sharingan wielder once again replied, moving out of the way as the Kage picked up Yujito bridal style and gave her to one of the Umbu. "I thank you for giving me back my apprentice, but what are you 4 up to?" The Kage spoke as he steeled his gaze at the 4 former Akatsuki. The remaining ANBU took a ready stance, preparing to act in a moment's notice. "As I've said before, we have detached ourselves from the organization due to inner conflict with our superior." "A rebellion? A mutiny?" the elder Nin asked. Kisame shook his head before replying, "No, old man, a betrayal." Silence filled the clearing as a gust of wind flew by, causing fallen leaves to blow away. The Raikage looked on at the group of four, analyzing them, while Itachi's group remained silent. Seeing no signs of deception, he softened his eyes a bit, but still remained on guard. I will never understand the mind of a nuke nin. The Kage chuckled as he broke the silence. Itachi looked on before he spoke. One word of advice. The elder nin's eyes stood attentive to the young nuke nin. I suggest you make some comrades. Just because Akatsuki has suffered the loss of 4 members doesn't mean they won't get more. As you noticed that 2 members were capable to infiltrate and kidnap that kunoichi over there with little trouble. He continued on as he pointed to Yujito. And how do you suggest for Kumo to make some comrades? The Raikage asked inquisitively. The answer is alliances, yeah, with other villages with Jinchuriki, yeah, Deidara said. Alliances? He asked skeptically. Yes, alliances would help, especially with villages that contain others like her. Sasori spoke while looking at the Nibi container. Others like Yujito? The Raikage thought as a bit of surprise etched into him. I suggest you go with Konoha and Suna. Both have Jinchurikis with them. The one in Konoha is favored by the Godame while the one in Suna is the current Kazekage. Itachi said. The leader of Kumogakure thought about his words before eyeing the group warily. Why are you helping us with this? I have told you already that we have our reasons. We will not stand to be used for a twisted man's idiotic ideals. By helping you keep your Jinchuriki from our leader, we ourselves benefit from getting what you would call payback. Itachi replied coolly while stressing the word leader. So you will become a thorn in his side, any? The elder man asked. If you put it like that, then yes, the dojutsu wielder said. I see. Well, I thank you once again for saving my apprentice, but the Raikage pulled out a slightly larger than average katana whilst 5 ANBU members took out their own weapons. That doesn't change the fact that all of you are S-class nuke nin. Come quietly and we could reason your trials. You really think you can take us? Even a Kage would be hard-pressed with us, and I doubt any of your umbu can take us on, said Kisame with a hint of amusement and anticipation. It sure won't hurt to try, wouldn't it? The Sandame asked. Sasori, Deidara and Kisame kept silent, but sported wild grins while Itachi had a small smirk. The Uchiha activated his Sharingan, intimidating the umbu, before speaking. I'm sorry, Raikage-sama. We can't do that for 2 reasons. First, we have other things to do than to get imprisoned, and secondly, we're already gone. Before the Kage could say anything, the group of former Akatsuki members lost their forms, revealing 4 columns of water that splashed down to the ground. Mizu Bun Shin. The Raikage inwardly groaned. What do we do now, Nagi-sama? A female umbu asked. The brown-haired Sandame looked at the 6 ANBU members and the unconscious Yujito. I need you to take Yujito to the hospital. The rest of you spread out and search this area for anything suspicious. I at least want to get an idea of what happened here. Raikage-sama, can those nuke nin be trusted? A male ANBU asked. Nagi thought for a moment before replying. An enemy of my enemy is my friend, at least I hope so in our case. But that's enough questions for now. You know your tasks, go. Hi! The umbu chorused and blurred out from view. Putting back his hat on, the Raikage looked at the full moon and the cloudless night. Closing his eyes, he took a breath of mountain air before disappearing into darkness. Konoha and Suna, well, I guess it won't hurt to try. 2 shinobis walked down the streets of Konoha. Even though night has fallen, the roads were still quite busy. The shorter of the 2, though only a fraction of an inch, with blonde hair caught the citizens' and shinobi's attention, most of which were contemplating on his resemblance to the yondaime, while the females just looked on with a slight blush and a little drool. It seems you're quite the stud around here, Naruto, Kakashi said while still reading his newest Ika novel. Naruto glared at his senpai with annoyance. Though getting stares of lust from women was sort of refreshing, it got really irritating in the long run, especially since he could sense quite a number of kunoichis stalking him. Great, just what I need, fangirls. The blonde sighed. It's not that bad, Naruto. I mean, I know a lot of people who would do anything just to have the attention of the opposite sex. These women are flocking to you. Take this chance that you have and relish it. He giggled pervertedly. Who does he know that would crave fangirls? The blonde thought. When you said that you know people that do anything to get attention of women, does that include Guy, his eyebrows, and his horrendous spandex? He asked curiously. Kakashi's giggling came to a halt. His face became serious before replying, "Let's not ask that question, okay? The first time I asked Guy that question, well, you can say that was the first and last time I ever asked him something pertaining to the opposite sex." Naruto shuddered at the possibilities that Guy could have done. Those rants about youth, those green spandex suits that showed way too much of something he didn't want to see, or that seemingly invincible genjutsu of a sunset that even Kakashi's Sharingan had a hard time with. The blonde was cut from his thoughts as they reached a complex with that sign of the leaf imprinted on the door. Kakashi closed his book and opened the door, motioning Naruto to follow suit. This is the Chunin/Jounin lounge, pretty much self-explanatory. A place where we just relax for a bit, getting away from the stress we get on a normal shinobi basis. The cycloptic Jounin explained as they made their way through a hallway with doors on the left and right sides. The duo stopped at a door that had the words Chunin Jounin 12 written on a steel plate. Grabbing the doorknob, Kakashi made his way in with Naruto right behind him. The lounge was a large room with furniture and couches spread about with televisions. A few large-sized refrigerators were placed in respective corners which were undoubtedly filled with refreshments. There were numerous Chunins and Jounins happily chatting about non-shinobi topics, though their attentions were brought to the two arrivals. Kakashi's visible eye crinkled into a smile while Naruto kept silent and looked at the crowd impassively. The duo walked in and through their fellow shinobis, all of whom returned to their conversations while still keeping some attention to the unfamiliar blonde. Looking around, the two saw some familiar faces huddled together. In a corner where two couches connected were Kurenai, Asuma, Genma, Guy, Anko, Hana, and Yugogo. The group seemed to have been talking about an interesting topic. So let me get this straight. That little blonde gaki that I remember from the Chunin exams 3 years ago kicked Kakashi's ass even though he was using his Sharingan? Anko asked a little skeptically. How many times do I have to repeat myself, Anko? Yes, he beat Kakashi hands down. I was there along with Guy and his team, Gunma, Asuma, Shizune, Sakura, Tsunade-sama and Jiraiya-sama. Kurenai responded with a hint of annoyance. Wow, to beat Kakashi-senpai on a full-out battle. He's probably one of the strongest in the village now. Yugogo exclaimed. You can say that again. After all, he isn't the apprentice of the Gama Sannin for nothing, Asuma said while lighting a cigarette. To think that the kid was with the Rookie 9 along with my Otuto, he must be something. Hana spoke while sipping an unknown beverage. YOSH, Naruto-kun is truly the epitome of youth, Guy shouted, much to the irritation of his friends and comrades. Tone it down, will ya? This is a place to relax and kami. I really need it, Kakashi said while making his way towards the group. Ah, Kakashi, we were just talking about the bout you had with Naruto. It's probably going to be the talk of the village for a while, Genma said while chugging down a beer. What's going to be the talk of the village? Naruto asked, making his presence known. The group turned to the blonde teen. Most of them smiled and greeted him while the ones who hadn't seen him yet stared on, namely Yugogo, Anko, and Hana. Kami-sama, from cute brat to a lean, sexy stud, Anko thought while daydreaming of fantasies that only she was capable of actually doing. Calm yourself, girl, he's just Kakashi-senpai's student. Sure, he's handsome, sexy, and built with a nice body that I'd like to. Stop right there, Yugogo thought, unconsciously breaking the sake bottle she had in her hand. Control yourself, Hana, he's just hot. Wait, what am I thinking? But yes, he's so argich. Hana chugged her drink quickly while her thoughts were in conflict. They're talking about how you kicked my ass in a full-out spar during your Jounin promotion, Naruto, said Kakashi. The moment those words left the silver-haired Jounin's lips, the room became quiet as the Chunins and Jounins turned their gaze to the blonde teen, who was a little unnerved by the stares. Naruto quickly sat down next to Hana, much to her pleasure and frustration, hoping to avoid the looks that the other neens were giving him. Well now, pass me some sake, Guy. We need to celebrate my student's success. Kakashi stated as he sat down in a chair opposite to the couches. Guy nodded his head while taking out 3 sake bottles from a near refrigerator and a few saucers. The moment the sake was put on the table, the room came to life once again as the Nins started to converse with each other once more. Naruto sighed as the tension broke down, taking one of the saucers which he filled with sake. The others seated around him raised an eyebrow in question. "Are you sure you can drink, Naruto?" Asuma asked, his question reflecting the others' thoughts. His question was answered as the blonde quickly downed the sake like a pro. Setting down his saucer, he filled it with more sake before replying, "I started to drink about a year and a half ago. Jiraiya-sensei told me that if I'm old enough to hold my ground in the shinobi world, then I should be old enough to drink." The others accepted his answer and took a drink themselves, each of them talking about the happenings in Konoha and in their personal lives. Naruto was stuck having a little interrogation by Anko, to which was stopped by Kurenai, Yugugo and Hana before things got out of hand. 2 hours passed and the room was nearly empty except for a few Jounins and the group Naruto was currently hanging out with. "Well, I think we should call this a night," Genma said while raising himself shakily, obviously drunk. "Hey Genma, think you can help me with those 2? Kakashi said a little tipsy, pointing to a smashed Asuma and an unconscious Guy. All right, he irritably replied. "That leaves Naruto with the women just like I planned." "Hataki, you genius bastard you," the silver-haired Jounin snickered. The 2 Jounins picked up their friends and bid farewell to the group, leaving Naruto with 4 intoxicated kunoichis. The blonde sweat dropped at the sight before him. Anko was red in the face and could barely keep her eyes open. Hana was asleep while talking about doggy style with a spiky-haired blonde, to which Naruto didn't understand that it was him that she was referring to. And Yugugo was staring at him intensely while swaying a bit in her seat. His eyes looked to the remaining kunoichi, Yuhi Kurenai, who seemed to be faring better than the others, despite being tipsy. "Are they going to be all right, Kurenai-san?" Naruto asked, referring to the 3 drunken kunoichis. The red-eyed beauty looked at her friends before giving a sigh. "I knew that this would happen. So what do we do now?" he asked. "Well, can you do me a favor and bring them to my apartment?" "That won't be a problem. But where do you live?" "I'll give you the directions as we go, though it's not that far from here, only a few blocks," she said while cautiously standing herself up. Naruto offered her his hand, to which she was grateful for. As he got a good grip, he lifted her into a bridal-style hold, much to the embarrassment of the kunoichi. "What are you doing?" she asked in surprise. "You seem to be a bit out of it right now, Kurenai-san. Plus, if I carry you, things would go a lot quicker than walking around being tipsy," Naruto responded. Kurenai took a moment, but nodded her head, accepting the answer in gratitude. After all, she really couldn't do much with her drunken state. Plus, his body feels so warm and comfortable. She was brought out of her musings as she heard an audible pop. Looking behind the blonde, she spotted 3 Kage Bunshins, each carrying one of the passed-out kunoichis. Naruto looked at his clones before giving them a mental command. The clones nodded and all of them jumped down an open window. Naruto and company were jumping on top of rooftops that seemed a bit familiar to the blonde. He shook his head and marked it as coincidence as he rushed to the directions Kurenai gave him. "Turn right at the next rooftop and it should be the large apartment complex 2 blocks away from the Hokage Tower," she said while enjoying the night breeze as Naruto carried her to her abode. The blonde complied and headed towards the mentioned direction. As he reached his destination, he abruptly stopped and stared at the complex wide-eyed. "This is my apartment complex," he thought in surprise. He was jolted out of his thoughts by a pinch from Kurenai. "Naruto, listen, my apartment room is on the 3rd floor, you can drop me off there," the red-eyed kunoichi said. The blonde complied with her request and shunshined to the 3rd floor along with his clones. As they reached the floor, Naruto set Kurenai down, to which she was grateful for the help, as she led them to her room. As Naruto proceeded, he spied his own apartment room, number 66, and couldn't help but yawn. "I really need some sleep. It's been a rather eventful day," he tiredly thought. He was jerked back to reality as Kurenai stopped in her tracks before facing a door numbered 65. "Kami-sama, don't tell me," he thought. The kunoichi unlocked the door with her key and looked at Naruto and smiled. Naruto, can you please bring them in? The blonde looked at her and the door number 65 before replying, Hi. The three clones entered the room and spied a large couch. Setting the three kunoichis in, they dispelled themselves in a puff of smoke. Naruto made his way out the door with Kurenai following behind him. Arigato, Naruto. I hope we get to see more of each other as friends and co-workers now that you're Jonin, she said. The blonde just smiled in response and turned to leave. But before he could make a step, Kurenai gave him a peck on the cheeks before shutting the door behind her. Naruto's eyes became the size of dinner plates, his hand caressing the cheek that Kurenai kissed. He stood there for a minute before composing himself as he opened the door to his own apartment. Women are so troublesome. With that thought, the blonde entered and shut the door behind him.